Kevin, thank you very much for joining us.
Pleasure.
Obviously everyone remembers you making the breakthrough as a youngster at Hibs, but you actually signed youth terms with Coventry City prior to that. Why Coventry?
Probably because when I was a young boy it was one of the only options I had, to be honest. Probably not a lot of people will know that I went to Coventry, and I went full time there when I was a kid. Left the school, and unfortunately for me I missed home, and I was right homesick, missed my mum, and it was being a Borders boy and probably having quite a comfortable upbringing as such, in the respect to quite a tight knit of friends, and then all of a sudden having to stand on my own 2 feet, it kind of caught me out a wee bit, and I never really enjoyed it. I never settled, so I come back up the road, and to be honest, I actually stopped playing football for a few months, and then I got a phone call out of the blue off the Hibs to go in and do some training, and the rest is kind of history as such. It happened quite quick. I only done maybe 20-30 minutes of a training session, and Donald Park pulled me to the side and said that I was better than everything that was already there. So he would love me to sign, and I was over the moon. So a kind of training session turned into 2 or 3 end of the season, and then going back into to start my first full pre-season as a full-time professional.
Had you had any contact with Hibs prior when you were at Hutchie?
No, really, no. And I was actual. I met Alex Muller not too long ago in the Tesco's. We both stay quite close to each other, and I was actually his youngest player. He used to do a school excellence on Easter Road when we used to have the old stand, and I was invited along when I was, I think maybe under 10 or under 11 at Hutchie maybe. But when the age groups changed for me at Hutchie, I went from kind of like one of the stars as such to then being one of the young ones in the group. So it took me a couple of years to find my feet, a couple of years at a critical age when you get to that 14-15 when professional teams start to sniff around. I know it's totally changed now, but in my day, you know, it was a wee bit unusual, rather than just playing the odd kind of, I don't know what they call them, a select game or something type thing, and you maybe play for Hibs or Hearts or Rangers or Celtic. You know, nowadays boys are in it pro youth at 8-9 year old. It's madness. But sadly for me, it was just a kind of, I don't know, a kick in the teeth as such, kind of when you're growing up and not having too many options. Yeah. And Coventry for me was the only one, so it was obviously one that you kind of had to pursue, in the respect that it worked out in the end, obviously. Okay,
so did they know when you had the chat with Donald Park? Did he know you were a Hibby?
Well, no, and it was funny because nobody will probably know his name, but a guy down at Coventry who's a main part of Coventry under Gordon Strachan, he was a manager at the time. They were in the Premier League. It was like big hitters. They had, you know, Gary McAllister's, boys like that were all playing there at the time. Dion Dublin, Robbie Keane. They had the 2 Moroccans, Hadji and Shipo, you know, proper big hitters. So I was kind of a wee distant shell, if you know what I mean, just being a young lad there. So George Mackey was the youth team manager at the time, who was a business partner at Donald Park. And after they had tried to get me into different hotels, and I had a wee trial where I stayed with a family for a couple of weeks just to see if it would help me settle. But I'd already made up my mind. Quite a narrow-minded person, and such. It takes a lot to change my mind. And when I'd made my mind up, there was no way, albeit for the great efforts of Coventry to try to keep me down there. But George had phoned Donald out of the blue and said, look, we've got a boy, we can't get him to stay, but he's a talent as such. So if we can't get him to stay, you should maybe get him in and see if he can, if he was up for kind of going to use type thing. So that's how it kind of come around as such. Probably a story that not a lot of people don't know. So it's amazing that sometimes when things work out for you, it's just meant to be, and it certainly felt like that for me when I was young.
So after you were pulled aside at that training session and it was made clear that Hibs did want you at that stage, who were the big influences on you prior to you making your way into the first team?
Donald Park is huge, and I still get on really well with him just now. He's a diamond of a man. I actually done a bit of work with him with SFA just recently. He was a massive help to me in my career. He was a proper old school youth team coach, where, you know, jobs were, there was no way that a kid wouldn't do his jobs when Donald was stomping along the corridor. He was a great upbringing for a lot of the boys, to give us a real good foundation to hopefully have went on and be the people that we were, because I'm certainly not one of these players that say that youth team players and current players can be spoiled or whatever people want to throw at them, but I certainly do think it is a wee bit easier than it was back in the day when you did have people like Donald, the hard taskmaster, giving you a good upbringing and keeping your feet firmly on the ground. I think that certainly stood me in good stead when I was a young boy.
You transitioned from a youth player to an established first teamer pretty quickly, but despite that, you were still actually the last of that initial golden generation, if we leave Stephen Fletcher at the side for now, as he so often does in this discussion. You were the last one to make this sort of first team breakthrough. When you're in the youth team looking at Riordan, O'Connor, Whittaker and Brown all getting first team games at the end of that 02-03 season, was that a source of inspiration or frustration for you?
Probably a bit of both. I think you should feel disappointed, and you should feel inspired in the fact that young boys are getting an opportunity. I know at the tail end of that season I spent a lot of time training with the first team, and I'd like to think that you should have that heart and you should have that wee punch in the belly that kind of takes the stuffing out of yourselves when other players take a foot kind of in front of you, whether that's playing in front of you in the team or whether it's getting an opportunity before you. So vaguely thinking back, I can remember training with the first team a lot and not making the squads, and when you're a young boy not making the squads, you're always sneaking past the first team changing room to see if your name's on the list, and when it's not, it's a disappointment. So I never actually realised that I was one of the last, but to be honest, my debut was almost through default as well. Back then it used to only be 16 players rather than 18 nowadays, and I was always kind of 17th, 18th, 19th man, depending on how big a squad Bobby made. And to make my debut with my dad being a massive Hibs fan, I used to always say to him, I'll be 17th, 18th man again, and then I got pulled before pre-match up in Dundee to obviously end up playing. So sometimes you need a wee bit of luck as well, and I think that was probably the start for me, that wee kind of bit of luck that hopefully I never look back.
Was your dad there that day you made your debut?
He just basically jumped in the car with my mate, my mate, best mate's dad. Both of them jumped in the car and went straight up to Dundee, because I literally only got told at like 12:30, 1:45 that Brebs had, I think he'd been feeling poorly or he'd been feeling something, whether it was his hamstring or whatever. I just got the nod to go along and obviously see the gaffer, and went along, and he said, I'm going to give you a debut today. And I think it's hard to explain to anyone being a Hibs fan and what the emotions are when a manager that obviously you've got that most respect for, and the respect that he's the boss. If you get a couple of words out of him, you're quite delighted, never mind him and sitting in front of you telling you that you're going to play. So I was obviously over the moon, and same again, that wee bit lady luck. Craig Burley got sent off after 10 to 15 minutes I think that day on a bad tackle on Tam McManus, and all of a sudden the perfect person to have all the ball that day was me. So I definitely think luck has to be on your side, and thankfully I got the rub of the green that day.
You mentioned Bobby Williamson there. He was, of course, your first manager at Hibs. How did you find working under him? I
loved Bob, to be honest. He was great, and I'm always thankful and grateful for the opportunity they give me, albeit probably through default as such, because he probably could have played me umpteen weeks before. But you always look fondly back on managers that have been good to you. And Bobby was obviously one of them. It was a wee bit surreal in the respect that when we got in the team, we kind of took the team by storm. And I've done interviews in the past and said that how was it such an easy transition into the first team, and how did it go kind of so smoothly? I don't know if you think it goes smoothly when you're a young player, but obviously when you start to get like a lot of media attention and fans start to obviously want autographs and things that are like obviously not used to you, it seems to come very easily for young boys, and it did for boys like Marcel and Scotty and Deeks and Gaz, boys like that. And I think it was just I think Hibs have got a way where young boys come through that the supporters have a sympathy towards, especially if you're a homegrown player and obviously you're a fan. So the transition of working under Bobby was really, really easy in the respect they just allowed us to do what we wanted, and everything that surrounded being a first team player would come really easy to us.
It's well known that at the time Hibs weren't in the greatest financial situation. There was a couple of players having to be sold and things. Was there ever a discussion amongst the squad? Did the manager or the chairman ever make it clear that youth was the direction the club were going in, or was it just that youth were the best boys available at that stage?
I think for Bobby, KB and Clarkey, I think they certainly got taken in, because I worked under KB up at Dundee, and he obviously told me more then than he did when he was assistant manager as such, because you never had that type of relationship with him. And by all accounts, I think when they got the job, they literally got told to slash thousands and thousands of pounds a week off the wage bill. And I vaguely remember boys like Nick Colgan, John O'Neill's, you know what I mean, like some big hitters, Paul Phoenix, etc. And same again, going back to that wee bit of luck, that sometimes being in the right place at the right time. I'd like to think in the long run we warranted our opportunity and we might have got it anyway, but it seemed like a match made in heaven that Bobby was having to get his budget slashed and lose some experienced players. Yeah, he had hopefully good players waiting in the wings to come in and kind of fill that void as such. So I think the club's financial situation when you're getting paid a bag of chips and a bottle of pop when you're a youth team player doesn't really come into your reckoning. And you're probably thinking, they're bloody getting overpaid because I want it. So we just, it's kind of a smooth thing when it comes to finances for players. You know, I have been at clubs where obviously there has been things said about budgets and that, and managers have said, etc. But I cannot really recall Bobby ever making a kind of beeline to try and address the squad as such to tell them that it was going to be that way and youth team players were going to get an opportunity.
Okay, as you mentioned though, for there on, especially because it does resonate with the fans seeing young laddies in the team, especially if there's a sense that they're Hibbies and that as well. The focus from the supporters and to a certain extent the media goes on to those young laddies. Is there anyone that you feel didn't get the credit that they were deserving of at that time amongst the more experienced players who's maybe forgotten about because of the impact you guys had?
Probably. I think when Tony first came in, he inherited obviously a vibrant young team with a lot of talent in it, and it was same again, a wee bit of a match made in heaven in the respect that I've worked under different managers, and it doesn't. I'm not one to badmouth people, but if we had inherited a Terry Butcher, for instance, or someone a wee bit more old school and a wee bit more direct, then a lot of our talents might never have been discovered to its full potential as it was having someone like obviously Tony coming through a bit the same as a Stubbs kind of mould, coming through like a development squad, youth academy, having the same kind of ideas, same philosophy, to then inherit that at a first team level. I just think it was a match made in heaven as such. I do think that some of the older players, boys like Gary Smith and that, who when I was the older generation in a changing room under Alan Stubbs, when I had the current Hibs team only last season, the season before, sorry, you never ever think when you're a young player you're ever going to be in that situation. You always just feel like a young lad, and I look back and think of boys like Gary Smith, when I spent a lot of time injured because I got a serious injury obviously when I was young, and the advice that him and Stephen Glass, boys like that, used to give the young boys. I don't think for supporters you're never going to change supporters' opinions of how they play on the pitch, but I think it's really, really important to have experience in the changing room, and I think the boys probably never got the credit they deserved in that respect, albeit fans are, like every fan's going to sit in the boozer at 5:30 and say so and so was rubbish that day, blah blah blah. But I think to have a successful changing room, people like Gary Smith, Stephen Glass, were the older generation when I was first breaking through, and they were really important to that squad.
I think the impression for outside, because the kind of characters that you guys were as well, like Riordan and O'Connor especially, I think, because they were a wee bit rebellious in their manner, that I think there's a lot of opinion outside the club that says that you guys basically burst through and ran the dressing room straight away. Is that right, or were there guys who would lay down the law to you and keep you in check? Nah,
nobody laid down the law. That's not with me and Bruni. I think that's probably the smoothest transition in the respect that it's sometimes daunting. Like I've been in changing rooms when young boys get laid the letter of the law as such when they come into the changing room, and some players, I've never been one myself, but some players can make an issue or a wee bit of a difficult situation when young boys first get their kit put in the first team changing room, and
to
the first
force
time
them to pay their dues.
I just think to try and ground them to say that just because you're here doesn't mean that you're kind of made it as such. Okay. Which I think there's a place for, but I've just never been one of the players myself. I think we were lucky in the respect that there was so many of us moved from the youth team changing room to the first team changing room so quickly that it almost meant that it was the same changing room, and it genuinely never had any feeling for us to walk along the corridor, because obviously we used to get changed at Easter Road every day, to walk past Big Jim the kit man to go into the first team changing room rather than walking in the kind of and having to go along and get your youth team kit to then walk back along the corridor. It almost felt like a normal easy transition, in the respect some of the players that you mentioned, Scotty's, myself, Gaz and Deeks's and that, I don't think Gaz and Deeks would ever be told by anyone. So the first team players were never going to tell them what to do and what they couldn't do. So it was just a kind of easy transition as such.
Okay, that 2003-2004 season, your first in the first team, was a bit of a difficult one in the league. I think it was an 8th place finish that year, but the one bright spot was the run to the League Cup final. You scored the winner in the quarter-final against Celtic. What are your memories of that game?
Well, that was my first professional goal as well, so I still remember it like it was yesterday, to be honest. The League Cup used to be on Channel 5, and funnily enough, Terry Butcher commentated on the game that night, and I still remember saying this is the future, when we were obviously running riot against Celtic. He obviously never thought I was the future 10 years on. But he's... I just remember it because all my pals were there. Sadly for me, when I first got in the team, my dad worked away a lot down in London, so he never got to many games, especially the ones through the week. And obviously I think Channel 5, it used to be a Thursday night, the League Cup games, so he missed it, although he watched it obviously in the Boozer down in London. So I just remember scoring that goal and having these stupid mad haircuts, and trying to tell my wee boy that getting lines in your hair is not that cool yet. I used to have it myself. So it was probably for me a defining moment in the respect of getting the man of the match bottle afterwards, first interview on the telly post match, doing the lounges as such within the club, and obviously the papers the following morning. Albeit scoring a goal against anyone in the Premier League is great, but to score one against obviously Celtic always gets magnitude that wee bit more. So it did feel to me like a turning point that Kevin Thomson had arrived as such, and I was starting to get taken serious as being a proper first team player. So I think it was definitely a momentous moment for me personally in my career, and luckily the club went on to get to the final, albeit a disappointing result in the end.
You also put Rangers to the sword on that run. No many teams beat both halves of the Old Firm on the way to a cup final. What are your memories of the penalty shootout victory? Was that a nervy one?
Apart from shite myself to take a penalty, I just actually remember the game being sodden wet, and really struggling with Rangers that night. Fernando Rickson and Mikel Arteta played in the middle of the pitch, and I used to have some ding-dongs with Fernando, it used to always be when he went mazes and I could kind of run out and clatter him as such. When he played in the middle of the pitch, I kind of realised how good a player he was. And Arteta, probably in Scotland, for the full of my career that I did play in Scotland against the players that I played against, he would probably be one of the most difficult to play against. He was a real top player, and I remember us huffing and puffing and being a wee bit short, albeit they had De Boers playing and they had a proper team. And McLeish actually took Arteta off, I think, with about 65 minutes gone, I think they had a big game at the weekend, and the tide turned a wee bit, and we started to get them on the ropes a wee bit, and obviously Dobie come on and scored a goal, and in the end it was probably us that were the team in the ascendancy. The penalty shootouts is just fairy tale as such. I've got the picture in my games room of us.
That's probably my favourite one until the cup final. It's probably one of my favourite ever.
It is, and it's sad when you look as a Hibs fan, and when I look through my career, when you look back, because you do look back when you finish, it's a one thing that, like you say, not many teams do it the hard way and beat both Old Firm teams to get there. The fact that it was a quarter final and a semi final as well, rather than kind of like a fourth round and then maybe a fifth round or whatever, I think it just had that wee bit more silver lining as such that it was quarter finals, then the semi final, both on the telly, to then fall at the last hurdle was really disappointing. But to have the memories and to think back of some of the momentous games you played in and some big nights for the club. Thousands and thousands of fans were through there that Thursday night through in Hampden, so it's what makes a special club.
What went wrong in that final? Was there an extra pressure on you as young laddies because there was 37,000 Hibbies there?
To be fair, I never really felt the pressure, to be honest, and I've never really felt the pressure as a player in the respect that when you're on the pitch, you're in your own destiny. Your destiny's in your own hands. You can dictate whether you work hard. You can't always dictate if you play well. Do you know what I mean? Everybody wants to play well, of course they do, but you can certainly dictate how you get about the pitch, how you work, do you know what I mean? How you kind of show commitment as such. And every player's makeup's different. Some players can be match winners and they can be a wee bit sulky, yet fans let them away with it because they put the ball in the net every other week. Some players, if they're really committed and then they do have the off game, the punters can be on their back. That's just the way it is. That's why we all love footy, because everybody's got different opinions. But I think that situation, the fact that we did have such a young, vibrant team, the fact that we did knock Celtic and Rangers out, the fans, I'd like to think like both Edinburgh clubs, whether you're playing Rangers or Celtic in the final or whether you're playing each other, both sets of fans go along that AM8 expecting to win, and they shut their eyes and think how good it'll be, not being able to get back along the M8, back into the tune, because how great a night it's going to be. That's just why we support our clubs. And sadly we fell short. I think we fell short in the respect that Livingston were a good team, albeit we trounced them 2 or 3 weeks later at Easter Road. But they did have Fernandez, you know, they had Stuart Lovells, they had older experienced players. And I think people kind of thought that Livingston were a poor team as such, yet I think on paper they were actually a decent team, and probably had a wee bit more experience than we did, albeit I'd like to think on paper we did have better players than them. But critical times in the moment, Scotty missed one-on-one with the goalkeeper, he missed a header right at the start of the second half as well. I think just sadly we never got over the final line through, probably a wee bit of experience, a wee bit lacking know-how, and did the expectation burden some players potentially. I certainly didn't think it burdened me, but people could obviously have different opinion.
Okay, on to another bit of diner, but I promise we'll pick it up in a couple of minutes. You did your cruciate at the end of that season. How scary was that as a 19-year-old to face a potentially career-threatening injury?
Well, it was one of the lowest points in my career in the respect. I think I'd played 26, 27 games in the bounds since getting in the team, and like I say, everything kind of falls into place, and every player, every fan dreams of being a professional football player, and when you actually live it in reality, you never want it to end, and when something as cruel as that does happen to you, and it's funny, it gets on my wick a wee bit, fans thinking like when you're injury prone and you get the twats that tell you that you've got glass legs and blah 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 blah, and to have suffered what I suffered through my career, albeit that one being the first one, it's hard to get over as a young player. And don't get me wrong, the support that I had through friends and through family and through the club was second to none, but we only playing 25, 26 games, and then all of a sudden having the first doubt in your mind that the fairy tale, the dream could be over, it takes a strong mentality, and I probably never had a strong mentality till I was 23, 24, 25 when I started to grow as a player. But when you're a young boy, I was probably a wee bit naive and a wee bit sensitive at times when I was younger, so it certainly took the stuffing out my sails, to say the least.
It's interesting what you bring up there about the sort of fans' lack of understanding when a player goes through serious injuries and things. I think a lot of fans aren't necessarily aware of how isolated some players become when they're injured as well, how much removed from the first team setup you are. When you were out with a cruciate injury, Bobby Williamson left and was replaced by Tony Mowbray. You're obviously in the midst of rehab there. How involved are you? How much did you meet Tony early on in that process, or were you completely out of it?
I did, to be honest, and it's funny you say that, and that's why Tony, and I still speak to Tony now, albeit we never got on overly well at Middlesbrough in the respect that I left the club. I don't know if we're going to touch on that, we can talk about that later, but I have great respect for him. He's a great manager, a great coach, great guy. And to be fair, when he first come in the door and stood in the changing room, like every new manager I've had, and kind of addressed the squad and told us who he was and who Mark Venus was, he asked to speak to me, and I went along thinking, because I think I had potentially 3 or 4 years left on a 5-year contract, a Mickey Mouse contract, albeit delighted to get paid any penny off the club, but a young boy's contract, and I thought, oh no, what's going on here? And he told me that take as much time as I want. I was the best player at the club, so I left his office feeling on top of the world, albeit I had some dark days, and thinking back to going through it again at Rangers, it certainly wasn't any easier travelling along the M8 to have to sit in the treatment room for 8 or 9 months and watch all the boys go out training through the window every day. I think it was possibly harder when I was young, in the respect that we trained at Easter Road, so when the boys actually left the changing room, they were getting in their cars and going somewhere across the town, and you weren't seeing them again until lunch. At least when you're doing your rehab at a training centre like East Mains now, I'm not saying it would be easier, but it certainly help a wee bit. I think to be distant from the squad for your pals that are now becoming really good friends of yours, part of your life, rather than just like an associate like you do have at other clubs, was really, really hard. And I just think that I got through it through sheer determination and guts in the end. I think 3, 6, 9 months down the line I was close to calling it a day and chucking it, and that goes through your head so many times, but thankfully the good people around you always push you on, and I managed to get back playing.
the team actually had a really good season in your absence. You came back in towards the end, but was there a pang of jealousy watching, as you say, your best mates at that stage, guys that last season you were thick as thieves with? Was there a wee bit of jealousy watching them actually thrive in the Premier League at that moment, thinking that should be me?
I think like any player, whether you're involved in like cup final day and you didn't get to have a strip on, you're always that wee bit envy, not in a bad way. I don't know if jealous is the right word or not, but of course you want it for yourself. Everybody does. It's, although foot is a team sport, it's an individual sport. Do you know what I mean? You get paid what you get paid at the end of the month, and your career is your career. And albeit when you're down in the dumps and you're in the gutter, although players can be nice to you, at the end of the day they look after number one. So when you do see players, being successful on the pitch and you're stuck in the treatment room, it can be really difficult. I think the good thing for me, being a fan, was me and my dad used to go to a lot of games. I think the 10-11 months that I was out, Dad hardly missed a game. Yet I don't know if the Rangers fans would be particularly happy, but when I missed 8 or 9 months at Rangers, he never went to one game. Albeit he was a Hibs fan, so he was happy to come through and support the club rather than obviously support his son. Albeit I would be the number one for him as such, but I think it helped me as well, being a fan and going and watching the team and just being in amongst the crowd and probably going a wee bit unnoticed at times. Me and my dad would just, wherever we would play, Livingston's, etc., we would just obviously drive through, and I wouldn't go with the team, I would just go with him, and whoever would leave me a couple of tickets, I'd get a couple of tickets, and away I would go and watch the game as such, and it almost gave you I don't know what the right word is, but like a feeling that you were part of it. Part of the fans, part of the team, and all of a sudden the text is after the game at your pal Scotty or whatever, or well done the day mate or whatever, and then you see him that night and you almost felt you were playing, although you weren't on the pitch, if that makes sense.
Because you were at least part of the match
day experience. And I think sometimes when you're down in the dumps and you don't go to the games, if it's a short-term injury for even if it's for 3 or 4 weeks, whether it's a muscular one or whatever, and you do keep yourself away from the stadium, or the team do have 2 away games and the team are away and they're travelling, maybe staying in hotels or whatever on the bus, if you do distance yourself, it can be difficult to get back into the groove and really feel like you're part of the team.
How competitive were you amongst the 5 or 6 years in the team?
Very, very. I say it to Scotty now to this day, and I say it to people, like, although me and Scotty, like, he is the one person that I would get out of bed at 4 o'clock in the morning for him and pick him out the gutter, and vice versa. You only really get a couple close mates in footy, and Scotty's my best as such. The fact that when he trained and I trained, I wanted to be better than him and he wanted to be better than me, it was the animals that we become. If he got man of the match one Saturday, I would be delighted for him, but I'd want man of the match. If he was the best player on the pitch and he got the plaudits on Monday morning, I wanted them, and vice versa. I think that's what made, hopefully, the people that we are and pushed us on to being the kind of players we were. I think if you settle for second best and allow others to steal the limelight, which we had 5 or 6 years all vying for it, you would get swallowed up a wee bit. And thankfully for us, it never really hindered anything else.
Was there many fights amongst the lot of you? Any times?
Well, Scotty and Deeks never really got on that well.
Right.
Me and Deeks used to stay in the same block of flats at Easter Road, Albion Gardens, and we used to play computer in that together in the afternoons or whatever. My first flat was with Scotty. And I think the way Scotty trained and the way he got in about people and that in training, kind of ratting around what people would expect. I don't know if Deeks particularly liked that. Sometimes you can be in the same team as somebody, you feel as though you're in the same team for a month, and other times you feel as though I'm never in his team. It's just sometimes the way it is. I think when Deeks and Scotty clashed in training, there was always that wee bit needle between them. The same as kind of if we were uptown on a Saturday as such, but fight wise and kind of proper falling out, there was such a close bond between the players and such a respect that apart from the kind of Mikey Stewart era, there was hardly anyone that really fell out with each other, which some people could say is no overly healthy, because I think that you need to have an edge in training, and it has to be that wee bit that if Scotty's running up the line just because he's my mate, I'd still go across and clatter him, and vice versa. Some players can accept that in training, and some players spit the dummy out a wee bit when they get kicked, and Deeks was never one that liked getting kicked off his teammates.
Okay. Talking about differences in personalities and thinking about differences in management styles, Bobby Williamson to Tony Mowbray does seem like a pretty vast difference. What were the major changes that you noticed in and around the club when you made your comeback for the injury?
Well, Bobby obviously never had such a big thing on living like a football player as such. probably a wee bit more old school in the respect that you trained similar every day. His team talk was similar every week. The way he presented his team was similar. We never really spoke about how you would play positionally. If you were a centre midfield player, you were a centre midfield player. If you played left midfield, you'd expect to obviously play on the left. Whereas when Tony come in, it was the first time in my career, even through youth team, that he would stop training and ask you where you were going. And I'd be like, what do you mean? Where am I going? I'm going to get the ball. And he's like, and start to coach you. Same with Scotty, do you know what I mean? If he was running here, Whittaker's probably the best example, centre midfield player when Tony obviously come in, and without sounding harsh on Wits, he never thought he was good enough to compete with us in the middle of the pitch, and he changed him into right back. I still remember playing a practice game and the two teams were up on the board, and I was injured obviously at the time, so I went out and watched sitting in the stand, and the new manager and Venus, they're obviously sitting there, and you're kind of wanting to be seen, and every player wants to obviously be liked by the new management, and they spent the whole game at Easter Road shouting at Whitty, and Whitty was obviously in the changing room beforehand, right back, bloody right back, what am I playing there type thing, do you know what I mean? And a wee bit disillusioned in the respect to, I'm a centre midfield player, kind of right midfield under Bobby, to Tony basically watching videos of the team thinking that he's not a right midfielder or a centre midfield player. For Whitty, who'd probably sit here now and say it was the best thing that ever happened to him, international fullback, but the way they were coaching and the way they were shouting information and instructions and having to pass forward and get the ball moving quicker, and then all of a sudden patience, and you know what I mean, just so many different bits of information, bits of coaching as such was so much different to what Bobby was like. It was like Tony inherited a blank canvas. We almost were a team that never had any style, any thought process of how to play. Yeah, our talent got us by at different weeks, yet Tony seen something that he wanted to try and create, and to be fair to him, he created it terrifically well, for basically having a group of young players that did run around a wee bit like headless chickens to all of a sudden making us into hopefully accomplished football players.
Whenever anyone talks about Tony Mowbray, the word philosophy is never too far away. What is his philosophy? How would you define his footballing philosophy?
Well, it's funny, when I went in to meet Pedro, I phoned Tony to ask him for a wee bit of advice. I thought about phoning Walter, I thought about phoning Gordon, but I thought Walter knows Barry, knows John Brown. I didn't want to put Walter in a awkward position, so I thought Tony's the only one that's not really got any alliance to any of them. I'll phone him and ask him for a wee bit of advice. And when I spoke football to him, it's how I want to coach and it's my belief in football, but I would say he's changed a wee bit, which in my opinion, as a coach, as a young coach learning to obviously be a coach myself, the game evolves. The game's black and white. It's you have the same principles, but I think the best coaches keep on learning every single day, and I think the old school ones stand still and do the same things whatever job they get to. And Tony, although he's got this word philosophy and a style on how he wants to play and what he believes in, he straight away said to me when we go and play against Fulham are a real good footy player, footy team. They've got the boy Kearney who just made his debut for Scotland just a couple of months back. He says if we go and try and press them, he says good footy players like you, he says we go and try and press you, he says eventually you'll get past us, he says and you'll hurt us. He's like, so I then have to shape my team to sit in and try and hit them on the counter attack. So all of a sudden, instead of just having a philosophy in the respect that our team never really changed the way we played every week, we just passed it, we got it down, we try to play fast. Yet now a manager at a different club, when every game in the Championship's different, some teams are big and strong, some pass it, some are really fast up front, he's changing to the opposition, which in my opinion is what the best managers do. We all watch Jose Mourinho park the bus against Chelsea at Stamford Bridge and get a 0-0 draw, or they nick it 1-0, and hence the reason why he's on 10 million a year at Man United. I think Tony's philosophy is, albeit a wee bit off Jose in the respect to their managerial careers, but he's got a great idea and understanding on how to play football.
Was he too strict in his principles back in the day for you then? I'm thinking especially the Scottish Cup semi-final in 2006. There was so much upheaval about the squad, there were so many injuries, and he still, it seemed from an outsider's perspective, he still went in and tried to play the same kind of football and quite an open game, whereas a lot of managers in theory in that scenario would have tried to be a lot more defensive and keep things a bit tight.
It could be like that. There's always in the individual, whether it's a manager, a coach, or whether it's a player, there's always that wee bit of arrogance that you know better than everybody else. It's just the nature of the beast. And in hindsight, when you're a manager and things don't go wrong, we all have an opinion of why it never went wrong, and we think we could have changed it and it would have worked. I think when you're a manager, you need to put your neck on the line, and I still remember I was getting beat off somebody at the Riverside, trounced. We got, I can't mind who it was, and he wasn't a ranter, Tony, a shouter. I think off the top of my head, I can only ever remember him shouting at Riordan, and he. We obviously set up to pass the ball at the Riverside, big pitch, bowling green, and we kept on passing it, and it got intercepted, and the team just kept on breaking on us and scoring. I can't mind who it was, but I think we got beat 3 or 4, and I played, and I done all right as such, but he come in and had a rant saying that if he's only effing going to do it my way, then he's can all F off, as if like if he's didn't do it the way I want you to do it, and have the style that I want, then you'll not be here. And I think he was probably a bit like that at Hibs, although probably not as robust in the respect that we were younger, so he probably had a wee bit more sensitivity towards different characters and different boys no needing a rocket as such. Some obviously your Riordans and O'Connors, they need a rocket every day, but a boy like Whitty wasn't the one that you could ball it and shout at. Do you know what I mean? You had to be a bit more softer on Whit. So it's I think he just had his own way, and probably in hindsight everyone would change things when you get beat, wouldn't they? So I think he's got his style, he's got his philosophy, and he kind of sticks to his guns. He wants to do it his way. If he fails his way, then at least he's gave it his best shot.
Okay. Was there mixed feelings at the end of that 2006 season? Because on the face of it, it was a successful season. There was a number of memorable victories, ending Hearts' unbeaten run at Easter Road, Ivan Sprill's hat-trick at Ibrox. But was there maybe a feeling that the team could have achieved even more?
I think that under the Tony Mowbray era, I think the only thing that lacked was winning a cup to proper get what probably a lot of the boys felt like they deserved and the talent that we had within the team. I did always think as a player and as a fan of the club that we always lacked a leader at the back. Hence the reason why you'll see my team kind of, and some people could argue that Paul maybe isn't that, but I always think up until the Rob Jones kind of come in and more kind of no nonsense, and Rob probably be the first to tell you that he wasn't the best at having the ball at his feet, yet he was such a great attribute to have defending and obviously attacking. I think that's the one thing that he lacked in the teams, and I think it, albeit the two Rangers and Celtic teams that we used to play against back then, plus the Hearts team, were proper strong teams. Even Dundee United, teams like that had real strong teams. Motherwell, do you know what I mean? There's a lot of old school players that were hard to play against. Dirty. I think the team, being a young team, young manager for the first time, really did achieve well. Albeit you always want that wee bit more, don't you? Okay,
Gary was the first member of the golden generation to depart, with Derek following pretty quickly thereafter, a couple of months later. Did it feel at that stage like it was a matter of time before the rest of you moved on?
I think when, like any player, when Gaz moves, when he was linked with moving away, and Tony was kind of giving us wee whispers in the corridor or on the training pitch of the kind of money that he was obviously going to be moving on for. But Tony always had that wee bit more of a special bond and I don't know what, a fatherhood figure type thing towards me, Scotty and Whitty than he did to Gaz and Deeks, because Gaz and Deeks were the type of boys that they travelled together. Gaz was one of the first players in our group to get a nice car. I think he had an X5, and he was the first player to have like a car where you think, oof, I wouldn't mind one of them. Thinking I'm getting underpaid here. And Deeks and Gaz kind of kept themselves to themselves. If there was an argument in training and Deeks was the one on the end of it, big Gaz would pipe up, that's my mate, and vice versa. They were like kind of two peas in a pod. I got on great with them, and they're both terrific lads. But I'm not saying they were outsiders as such, but they were two that liked to socialise themselves. They weren't that fussed about being part of the camaraderie in the changing room. And I just think that's the kind of way it was as such, that in time the players behind Gaz and Deeks, the first to move, were always going to move eventually. Sadly for Hibs, and I've said that numerous times, if Hibs had been Rangers or Celtic and that was the team that we all broke through in, the likelihood is there probably would have been 3 or 4 of that, 6 or 7 that might have done 10 years at the club, because you probably would never have had to leave. But with Hibs, and it's the same now as a fan, the I don't know what the right word is, the ambition to create a team that's slightly better than what it's produced for the last 10 years would be investing in the team a wee bit more financially, whether it's bringing players in for fees or whether it's paying a wee bit more wages. I just never see it happening as a fan, and and it was probably the same when we were players. When you were negotiating new deals, you were negotiating over 50 quid a week. You weren't negotiating over thousands. Albeit you'd never want to put the club in a position that they couldn't afford to be paying what they were paying, but same again, as a fan you always want that wee bit more, don't you? And as a player you always want that wee bit more as well, when you know that your head could slightly be turned, knowing that you could pick up vast amount of money playing exactly the same game, playing for a different team that wears a different strip, potentially sitting in a car for an extra hour in the morning. It's potentially winning trophies at the end of the season. It's a hard thing for any player to turn down, and I think the players, the 6 or 7 that did move on, that are the so-called golden generation, it was inevitable that it was going to happen one day for everybody.
Right, I wasn't going to ask this question because it's too hypothetical, but you've kind of brought up yourself anyway. If someone had come in for outside and given Hibs 20 million quid and said keep those 6 or 7 boys, what could you have achieved?
I think I always say to people that what a lot of that generation went on and achieved, bearing in mind David Murphy, part of my team, played in the Premier League, went for £1 million. The 3 up front went for millions combined, millions and millions of pounds between them in wages. The midfield 3, Boozy, one of the best players I played with at that time anyway. I think we were so close to having such a good team. Bear in mind that Celtic had a monstrous squad, boys like Kevin Thomson, Neil Lennon's. I would argue that the Celtic team now we're blessed with watching how good they are with some talented individuals, but I'm not quite sure if they would beat that team back then. And we all know what's happening at Rangers at the moment. Do you know what I mean? That Rangers team certainly wouldn't beat the Rangers team back then. So I think what we achieved off the back of, I think the standard was much, much higher back then, and it was harder if we did have an investment and we did keep that group together. The fact that I think, well, Scotty won the league, I won the league, Whitty won the league, Deeks went to the Old Firm, Gaz potentially could have went to the Old Firm, played in the Premier League, Fletch played in the Premier League, Murph played in the Premier League, Whitty won the league obviously, do you know what I mean? Scotland International. For me it was Gary Caldwell won the league. So you've got like 6 or 7 players that won the league in the team anyway, albeit with different teams, but I think it certainly could have achieved. I know it's a pie in the sky question, but I do think if we'd stayed together for another 2 or 3 years, especially the fact that Paul Le Guen had that Rangers team when we used to give them a hard time, and Rangers potentially were going to go through a wee bit of a difficult period, still had Celtic to beat and a strong Hearts team as well, so I still think we would have been in there punching, definitely.
Were you surprised that Gary went to Russia? Because from the outside, looking at your group, Gary and Derek seem like the ones who would have the hardest time adjusting to life away from each other. Would that be fair to say?
Aye. I think Deeksbury, obviously, it's well known that he's family, and when he goes up the tune, he goes, most people go with 5 pals, he goes with 50. So it tells you kind of the network that he's got when it comes to his pals and his family, etc. I did always think that Deeks was a homeboy and he would never ever move. I thought the Old Firm was the perfect move for Deeks in respect he could stay through and travel through. Gaz was a funny one, and I think Gaz was the one player, I think, without sounding harsh on him, because look, we all want the best for each other. He was the one player when I first joined the youth team that money was a big thing for Gaz, and he wanted the money as quick as possible. I think the Russia move was a relatively good move for him. I think he'd done alright, didn't he, the first time he went there. Managed to get to Birmingham off the back of it while his career was still on track a wee bit, still involved in Scotland squads, and then the shenanigans happened as such, probably I think maybe the tail end of the Birmingham career, didn't it? So I think he was probably the one that forced the first move that come along, rather than biding his time and waiting a wee bit. No, that's a bad thing, but because I moved as well as soon as Rangers, as soon as the deal was agreed, I moved as well. But I do remember Gaz with Tony saying, "You're mad wanting to go there. Why do you want to go to Russia?" You know what I mean? And he was almost pushing the deal through. So I do think when Gaz moved, it was a wee bit of an eye opener for us. But then same again, Gaz was quick in telling you how much money he earned and how much money he was getting. And when you're, as I say, not earning anywhere near that, you think to yourself, well, he's not a better player than me. I did always say that I never played footy for money. I played because I loved playing, but at the end of the day, I'm glad I was selfish through my career to be sitting at 32 and have a few options in my life rather than potentially scraping a barrel. So I think you have to look after number one, and Gaz's decision was based on what Gaz felt was right for him.
couple of questions off the back of that. You mentioned looking at Gary and thinking he's no better player than me. Who was the best he is, in your opinion?
Well, I always told all my pals that Fletch was the best, and that's not just because I now look back and think, oh, because he went on and potentially had maybe the best career. It's a hard one because Scotty has now had a prolonged career, winning trophies after trophies, captain Scotland, captain Celtic, yet Fletch will have earned far more money. It depends what people put into a career as being successful. I think Scotty's got 13, 14 medals. I think Fletch will only have one, unless he's won something else that I cannot think of off the top of my head.
No, I think it was the League Cup.
League Cup, aye. I'm pretty sure he never won anything when he went down south. He's played in France, obviously we had that wee stint, didn't he, that he played at Marseille. And he's combined total, I think 7 million to Wolves, 3 million to Burnley, 12 million to Sunderland, so over 20 million quid worth spent on him. I would think he was the one that probably edged it out of the lot of us, but I do think that, and it's not sticking up for me as such, I think I'm better than the rest, but we are all different players. Although Gary and Deeks were strikers, Gaz was a lone striker, could play through the middle, he was powerful. Yeah. Deeks was a white. Even if he played Deeks on the right, he would end up on the left. it's just what. Even if Tony strapped him to the terrace, and he would still end up on the in front of the main stand. It's just the way Deeks played. Scotty, yeah, he's a centre midfield player now, but he probably wasn't when we were younger. And obviously Whitey's a right back. Fletch, same again, probably a wee bit more similar to Big Gaz, albeit he's not a powerhouse that runs away from people. He's more a kind of link-up man. And I just think we're also different. Albeit I'd like to think everybody thought we were talented.
The other question that came off the back of that, how much did you talk amongst you about where you wanted to go and where you wanted to be and where the next step was?
Well, I think because, like I said, Deeks and Gaz, although I got on really well with them, they weren't me, Whitey and Scotty and a boy called Kevin McDonald, who's now my brother-in-law. We were the kind of four. We played golf together on our days off on Wednesday. I was only one of the four that never drove, so they three used to spell it who would take their cars to training. Deeks and Gaz would obviously always travel together, so they kind of kept their business at their business, and the three of us, myself, Scotty and Whitey, Geordie obviously spent a wee bit more time in the reserves, and then he went and played at Airdrie and Clyde and Berwick. But moving wise, Whitey obviously went last. I think Scotty and Whitey both went in August, but I think Scotty was a wee bit before Whitey. I think Whitey's move to Rangers was a wee bit more, not so much out the blue, but Scotty's one was always going to happen. He was a talking player that summer. So me and Scotty spoke a lot in the respect we wanted to play at the same team. That was I've actually got a picture still on my phone that he actually sent it to me not that long ago. It just always seems to pop up. We've done a thing for the record, and I'm leaning on his shoulder with a Rangers strip on, and he's got the Celtic strip on. It just looks stupid, but that to us that was normal. I did beg him to obviously go to Rangers, and I knew Rangers obviously really wanted him, and we spoke, and we still do. We didn't really have any secrets, me and Scotty. Whitey, same again, really good friend of mine, but a wee bit more quieter, and a wee bit keeps his cards a wee bit closer to his chest as such, and me and Scotty kind of bear all, if that's literally.
Okay, fair enough, we'll move on swiftly for that. Right, doubling back to Hibs then, 2006, Tony Mowbray signs a new rolling contract in September, and then a month later he's off skate to West Brom. How unexpected or disappointing was that for the players?
It was probably one of the biggest blows I had in my career. It only made me captain that summer. I just felt like that team was just starting to mature, and it was starting to get better and better and better. We had some real talent, and the fix of bringing in Rob Jones was something that a lot of the players amongst ourselves spoke and always felt that our defence was kind of the Achilles heel of that team. You know, Caldwell was never a great defender. He was great for that team, passing the ball and that, but he could have done with a rock alongside him. But obviously Gaz moved on as well, so the defence was always one of the ones that felt like it was the one that had to be fixed. And then when Tony then left, it almost felt like business unfinished. And when you have someone that you feel like is a father figure to you in your career, because you have loads of managers and they're just managers, but Tony, just because he inherited us when we were young, you do have that special bond with him. For him to just kind of up sticks and leave was a real blow. He actually left us just before a derby.
2-2, I think.
2-2, 2-0 up, cruising, and then bloody Zibby Malkowski had a shocker.
Yeah, that was his partner gift. He gave Zibby a 3-year deal.
I know. That was a during a week game as well, was it? No, was that a weekend one?
I'm sure it was a weekend because I was in Fuerteventura. I remember I was in Fuerteventura.
I remember the boy.
Valika scored twice.
Valika scored.
Zamama.
Mikulinas got sent off as well.
Zamama and Killen. Zamama and Killen scored for Hibs.
I think we battered them that day, to be honest. It was one of the.
I think that was 1-2.5 after about 15 or 20 minutes.
We played really well, but it just felt like, obviously, John come in off the back of Mark, moving on as well to join Tony. But to be fair to Tony, he was on the phone to me every other night telling me that he wanted to sign me at West Brom, so it was a nice reassurance for me. But same again, like John was one of my favourite players growing up. Yeah, when he come in, it was sunshine and roses, because it almost felt like the same type of manager had come in off the back of Tony. And obviously everybody knows that things change quite quickly, but it did feel like there was a team that was growing so good and had so much talent in it to then all of a sudden the main catalyst for that, the person that had kind of made us into the footy players that we were starting to develop into, had just kind of up sticks and left.
How serious was the conversation about you following up at West Brom?
He was on the phone. When I moved to Rangers, he begged me on the phone every night to go to West Brom, and I used to tell Gordon Strachan, Walter Smith, and Tony Mowbray that I want to come to you. So when I signed for Middlesbrough and I seen Gordon, he never even mentioned it, but I used to tell him, you're going to come to us, I want to come to you. And then Tony used to phone, you didn't want to go to Rangers and Celtic, what's the point? You're already better than them. He's like, we'll be in the Premier League soon, and I'm like, go to the Midlands, and I'm like, aye Gaffer, definitely, I want to come down, like, and he's like, you built a nice big house and all this, and get me like bigging it up like it was the best place in the world. And I didn't think Tony held that against me. Do you know what I mean? He knows that I was a homeboy, and for me moving club for the first time was the perfect scenario to still be able to stay at home and travel through.
Okay, the point in the conversation was always going to come where John Collins came up. I know you've talked about it a million times and you probably seek to back to talking about it, so I'll not focus on it for too long. But when we spoke to Michael Stewart, he essentially suggested that John's attitude and the way he spoke to players meant he started losing respect for within minutes speaking to the group. Would you agree with that?
As I say, he was one of my favourite players growing up, and when he first come in, same again, exactly the same, apart from a different person standing in front of you, he addressed the squad, him and Tommy Craig, introduced himself, spoke to the squad, said everybody a clean slate, opportunity for everybody to impress him, the usual what most managers say. And then he asked me and Scotty to go and see him. So me and Scotty went along and seen him in his office, and he said to us that you're the best players at the club by a country mile. You're obviously the captain, Tom. I want you to be at the front of everything. I want you to lead everything, whether it's going up to breakfast first, warm-ups, and me and Scotty left thinking, happy days, nice guy, seems alright. And for potentially 3 or 4 weeks, and I still don't know to this day, you maybe need to have John on. I think signing the contract for Willie Mackay, and Willie obviously then putting it in the media saying that he now looked after the two best prospects in Scotland, got under John's wick a bit, and all of a sudden his attitude changed, certainly towards me, and it was a kind of disastrous 6 to 8 weeks, whatever it was, leading into obviously the January transfer window, where I lost armband, done numerous things to me without me saying that he was wrong and I was right. We were both wrong, but I said some terrible things to him. I'd like to say he said some shocking things to me as a player, but I certainly don't hold any grudges, and I've spoke to him since. I just think it was probably a wee bit inexperience for him being in the first job, and two of his so-called best players were then trying to obviously get away. We weren't trying to get away, but Willie was obviously trying to get us away. A lot of the things in the paper that were direct quotes for us were quoted by Willie Mackay to the media. He just dictated. It was almost like a wee game for him, and sadly for us, for a supporter's point of view, at that club, you wouldn't like to see your team captain and one of your so-called players coming out saying that he wants to play for another team. When you're in the mist, I never really seen it like that. We just seen it as kind of publicity and being linked to Celtic and Rangers, and we felt like we were on top of the world. But looking back, it was probably naive and immature, and probably a disservice to the club and to the fans that you were, I suppose, in a way, seeking to move to a different club. Gladly have stayed at Hibs for the rest of my life, but like I said earlier, it was madness to think that Hibs could ever match other teams' wages, other teams' ambition to hopefully try and be the best you could be. It's just the way it is. It's the same way Jason just moving on. It's the same with potentially John. Just because the players' names change and the era changes, it's still exactly the same thing. And that time, that era, it was my time. I just wish in the end I could have stalled for a few months and been part of obviously winning the League Cup, but I've not got a crystal ball, and you know what I mean. I went on and won titles, won cups, played in the Champions League, played in UEFA Cup. Could I change it? Probably no. If you had a fairy tale and you had a crystal ball that you could do it all and win everything, and I was sitting here and had the career that I've had and had the 2 cups that wee Louis got under his belt, I cannot be too greedy, can I? Do you know what I mean? Every fan would tell you that they would love to do it as well, so I think I would be selfish and naive to think that could happen for me. You just try and do what's right at the time, and at that time, I think 21, 22 year old, I'd done what I thought was right. I said things to John that I thought at the time was right. Looking back, I probably said the wrong things, and John, I would like to think, said the same. I think the Mikey Stewart scenario with me moving on and then the players having the unrest and the whatever they done when they went and met Rod, etc. I'd already left the club, and to be honest, although me and Scotty are really tight and I'm saying we tell everything to each other, I never actually knew that it happened until it happened. I never knew it was planned. I never knew they'd spoke about it. I know Mikey never got on well with him before I left, and John was just set in his ways that he believed his way was right, and if players never kind of done what he thought was right, then he sometimes would speak to you in a manner that at times some players would accept, and some players potentially a bit like Mikey wouldn't accept, and he would obviously have a go back at.
Does it seem mad looking back? Because I have to say from the outside it does, looking back at your career and you realise that you spent 3.5 months under John Collins. It's madness that it was able to sort of escalate and deteriorate that quickly. Did it feel like much longer when you were in it?
It did, especially the month of January when, like I say, I don't even know if they were allowed to phone me, but Gordon and obviously Walter and Tony used to phone me every night, and we were linked with a few other teams. Charlton, I think, put bids in for us, and I think Blackburn were in for us. There was rumours Davy Moyes wanted me, without having all these contracts on the table to get to choose for A, B, C, D and E type thing, but we were told that obviously certain clubs wanted us, and that month was long, and I lost the armband, I lost playing in the team, and some people might think back, well, you deserved it, and John come out and said that I took my eye off the ball and the armband was a distraction for me and blah 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 blah. Yet I still say it to Scotty now, where we laugh back. You know, Scotty put a transfer request in, I never. I'm not saying that Scotty done wrong and I done right. I'm just saying that I decided that I didn't think it was the right thing to do, and I said to Scotty the same, but he said, "Oh, F it, I'm doing it because I do like him," type thing, and I says, "Well, I didn't think it's right." I think people thought that because Scotty acts daft sometimes, I was the brains, and Scotty was the kind of puppet that if I said jump, Scotty say how high. But I think when you meet him, you would definitely know that he's got his own opinion. He wouldn't be the person and the leader that he is if he never had his own opinion, and he done things that I thought were wrong, I done things that he thought was wrong, and we both done different things, yet it felt as though I took the kind of brunt of the whole situation off of John, and that was where I kind of had to come out fighting as such, and fight for me personally rather than for us, because I think people thought it was about us and about me and Scotty, but in the end, you know, Scotty kept on playing, Scotty stayed, I moved on, and it felt as though people thought that it was me and John that had the ding dong, yet after I'd left the club, 20 odd players went to Rod and had a ding dong about John. So I think what me and John had was just a wee drop in the ocean compared to some of the other grudges that other players had with him. Yeah, I think some people bulked my situation up to be bigger than it was. Right,
on the subject of Scott acting daft, what did you think when you saw that I don't know interview?
That's what I'm saying. Look, he's a diamond of a boy, he's my best mate, and that when I do look back, and obviously Scotty was there for me in the respect I used to always say, what did I do? Do you know what I mean? Like, why is he being like this with me? And I used to laugh, saying, how are you getting to train? Do you know what I mean? How are you getting to do this? And how are you getting to do that? And he's like, I don't know. He used to just laugh because that's what he's like. But it was just it was surreal, and Scotty doing things like that to me told people that Scotty's got his own opinion and he can do what he wants, and if he believes in something or if he doesn't want to say something, he'll not say it. And I think John knew that, but I think John played on the fact that Scott was maybe a wee bit daft and he would say things that he didn't mean. If anything was towards John, obviously, I think John would play on that and think that Scotty was just the class clown, and that's the way he wanted to be perceived, and things that he said he maybe didn't mean. But whatever Scotty done through his career, if he sat here, I'm pretty sure he would not have any regrets at what he said to John. And their relationship, I know they still didn't have an amazing relationship when they were at Celtic. So it's just the way John is. Terrific player, one of my favourite growing up. But when it comes to coaching and man management, I think it was just probably a bit too early to have such young talented footy players that potentially wanted to move on and be put in so many different situations as a young manager that he probably found it difficult to deal with.
Right, on that subject, I'm not going to ask you to speak for Scott in any way, but would you have found it difficult, for example, at Dundee, if Paul Hartley comes in the dressing room and says, "Here's my new assistant," and it was John Collins?
Nah, probably no, not. I met John up at Dundee. I was injured when we played Celtic the first season that I was up there, and it just so happened that I come through doing the lounges pre-match, and John walked straight off the pitch. I couldn't have timed it better, or worse, whatever way you want to look at it. And he was great to me. "How are you getting on?" And I was like, "Aye, good." And I was like, "You?" He was like, "Aye, good." He was like, "What is it?" And I was like, "My calf." And he was like, "Bad." And I was like, "A couple of weeks probably." He was like, "You'll be all right." He says, "Keeping well." And I was like, "Aye, keeping well." I was like, "You?" "Aye." And that was it. Good luck. See you later. But whether he's got a personal grudge or I can't speak for him. I didn't have any grudges. I didn't hold them. Life's too short. And as I say, if he could coach and manage the way he played, then he would be Jose Mourinho, because he was a terrific footy player. He just, sadly for that, I didn't even realise it was only 3.5 months that I worked under him. But it just seemed to everything come to a head, and it just clashes of personality, clashes of what he wanted compared to what the boys were used to. Was just made it a difficult situation to be in.
I feel like you're setting me up perfectly here for the next question every time, Kev. This is too easy. Right, speaking of holding grudges, the next thing that happened in your career led to a few fans holding a few grudges. The quotes.
Aye.
When you left.
Aye, and that's looking back when you when you have a crystal ball and you would change things. You would obviously change that. I said when I done an interview just recently, and I had Mr. Jackson on the phone tell me that I did say it, and I said to him that I didn't, and we're just going to disagree as such. I know that I didn't say it. He says that I did. I didn't think any player ever picks a headline what goes in the paper.
No.
Maybe it does, and I know for a fact, swearing on my kid's life, that numerous times in my career reporters have just done quotes for me, albeit Keith. You'd like to think that he's no, but it's sometimes the way it works. Maybe that was the only way it worked for me, but I think hopefully that the Hibs fans, you're never going to change everybody's opinion, but I think playing for the club for free for a combined, 10 or 11 months, hopefully being a tiny part of what happened on the 21st of May, I'll hopefully I've went a long way to forgetting all about a silly headline. I certainly wouldn't. It's not even something that anyone would say.
Disney roll off
no,
the
it
tongue.
doesn't. No, it's just stupid. But Keith's a big Rangers man. He didn't like John Collins, the Celtic connection. He thought it was comedy gold to probably do what he'd done, and have his nice dig like what a lot of reporters like. I like Keith. I had a good relationship with him. I used to do the column with him. I still think highly of him just now, but. When I spoke to him, I told him that he should bite the bullet and take a wee bit of responsibility. But he tells me that he sat in his lounge and I said that, so we're just going to have to disagree.
Okay, fair enough. Why Rangers then? Was it just that they came in at the right time and gave you an escape route?
I would say that Rod pushed me towards Rangers.
Was that because it was the most money on the table?
I didn't mean it because I thought I was better than I was, but I do think that the way they ended up doing it with Scotty and kind of having the both teams fighting over each other was the best way to get the most money. I think rushing me in the January transfer window it helped me in the end, because obviously me and John never got on particularly well, but I think they certainly could have got more money for me if they'd done the same as what they'd done for Scotty and just had a kind of opening bid and let two teams fight over us. I know that when I phoned Willie and told Rod after he had told me Rangers had accepted the bid, when he asked me what club, I thought it was Celtic. I genuinely thought Celtic wanted me more than what Rangers did. I thought Rangers wanted Bruni more than what Celtic wanted him. I thought the way Gordon spoke was everything that was more about me as a footy player, the way Celtic played, the way they passed, compared to probably the way Walter was, just being a winner and, you know what I mean, just wanted you to come and be part of the club and you would do great, whereas Gordon was talking about like Nakamura's and the players that we've got here will suit you perfect and you'll be perfect for this team, blah 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 blah. So he was talking more like kind of what he'd seen me playing, whereas Walter was more just like, you come here and you come to a great club and you're going to win. When I went up that day, Rod told me that he'd accepted a bid for Rangers, so did I want to go? And I said aye. When I told Willie, Rod's phone never stopped. Peter Law trying to phone him, but he wouldn't answer the phone to them. Yeah. So in the end, could Rod have said that I've accepted X amount off of Rangers, and if you put more on the table, then it's up to Kevin to which club he wants to go? I'd like to think they would do. But Rod, for whatever reason, for whatever way Rod does business, if I wanted to go, I was going to Rangers. So it was a no-brainer in the situation that I was in.
You mentioned earlier that you thought in the summer there was still a chance that, although you wouldn't go as the package deal everyone had spoken about you as for a year or two before that you would still be reunited with Scott at Ibrox. How did you feel when it started to become clear that wasn't going to be the case?
I think when and it's same again, Scotty went for what Scotty deserved to go for. I think the way the club handled Scotty's bidding war and his wages kept on escalating and was basically the perfect scenario for Scott. And probably the worst scenario for Celtic in the respect they had to pay so much money for him and give him a big hefty contract. Does he deserve it? Of course he does. But at one stage, without telling you what we earned, but we would have accepted far less money off of Celtic when we first got told about Celtic compared to when all of a sudden Walter Smith phoned and all of a sudden Wally's saying, well, Rangers will give you a couple grand a week more, and then all of a sudden Celtic will give you a couple grand a week more, and before you ken it, what you were quite happy to sign for 6 weeks ago was doubled. I think it doubled again for Scotty. So it's I think the way it happened and the procedure of Scotty finishing off and obviously then Celtic at one stage looked like you say the package. I think it was about £5 million they were willing to pay for the two of us, and Celtic fans will probably be quite happy that they only got the one of us in the end. But to pay 4.2, 4.3, whatever it was for Scotty, to have potentially had the two of us for only another few hundred grand more, seemed like they'd had to obviously pay far more than they were willing to do in the January transfer window.
What was it like for you and Scott to go from teammates and best mates to mortal enemies and best mates?
Well, the thing is for me and Scott, which I think is refreshing, and it might not be refreshing for some Celtic and Rangers fans, because I know everybody's got different opinions of how they love their football club and how much passion some people have towards it, but me and Scott's relationship never changed. It probably got stronger.
Did you ever worry about being seen together?
No overly. It was funny because although probably Celtic fans hated me when I was there, even when I went back and watched Scott in the Champions League, when I think I was at Dundee maybe, and I had to obviously park up in the old school, which is demolished now, and you'd obviously have to walk through the punters because it's Champions League game, so everybody gets there early. A lot of Celtic fans wanted a picture with me, and you know what I mean, and really nice to me, and I think probably because although Rangers fans are brilliant with me and they always have been, I was never one for kissing the badge. I never ever hid the fact that I was a Hibs fan, and I think punters, I'm not saying them all, because I know there'll be loads that didn't like me, but I think they had a wee bit more respect for me, that I was just a normal lad, and I never ever played up on the fact that whatever club I played for, apart from really Hibs, but I still showed the same emotion whether I won a Dundee derby, an Old Firm derby or an Edinburgh derby. An Edinburgh derby just meant that wee bit more to me, the fact that I grew up a Hibs fan.
You were reunited with one former teammate that summer though, in the form of Stephen Whittaker. Obviously he's just made his return to Easter Road, so I know because he plays a slightly less fashionable position, he's maybe forgotten about sometimes when you talk about the qualities of the boys. What is it that makes Stephen special?
I think his fitness. Mr. Reliable. We used to call him the German because he was built like a big German machine. I know Tam McManus comes out calling him the Grinch and that, and he did get called the Grinch, not so much off of us. We used to call him the German because he was just a big machine, just naturally powerful, and like one of the boys that would never need to lift a weight. Yeah, he's six pack, and you know what I mean, nice shape, and just everything come naturally. I mean, being a football player, an athlete as such, so, you know, some of us had to bloody work hard to stay fit. But Whitty was just a natural boy, and the fact, same again, you never hear much about Whitty's life off the pitch, and he's a good boy, nice boy, family boy now. Obviously he wasn't when he was younger, he never had kids when he was 19, but he's just brought up nice family. I know every player's got a nice family, but it's just the way he is. I think he's going to bring huge quality at the club. I think Hibs especially, and the way we are in Scottish footy, there's these players, when you mention Maloney's and Whitty's and that, coming back and playing for teams out with the old firm, it can only help try and create the type of mindset and the type of professionalism you need to try and get to the top, and it can only bode well for having the younger players breaking through, because squads nowadays, there is more opportunity, I think, for younger players to come through. Statistics might tell me that that's wrong, but I do feel squads, even though they might not be young, but I see Martin Boyles and boys like that as young boys. I know he's playing for Hibs and he's a first team player, but John John's got a huge reputation, but I still see him as a young boy. We only ever playing at Hibs, he'll get an eye opener when he moves, to actually know what it takes. And I think when you see boys like Whitty and the way he will live his life and how he'll be in around the place can only help these type of players.
Okay. We mentioned earlier that obviously Hibs were never going to be able to match the money on offer elsewhere and match the ambitions that other clubs could offer. But were you surprised that all 5 of the original golden generation left within 15 months of each other? It seems like the money from one, in theory, should have been able to sustain keeping another for maybe a year or two extra.
I think so. I think that was. I think for a fan's point of view, and when you're a player, you never really look at it for a fan's point of view, because, like I say, you do look after number one. It's just the way. It's the way it has to be. But I think when you do lose so many players, and you could argue John was a wee bit unlucky, inheriting such a good team. Albeit he got not so much lucky, but he got a nice accolade in winning the League Cup off the back of my man could have picked the team when he first come in. So,
and you could argue he maybe played some part in driving some
aye, and then it's I think that inevitably that team, whether it's Hearts, Hibs, whether it's a team Partick Thistle or whatever, if you have that kind of crop, you're always going to be under the cost to losing them. It's the same now. Is John going to stay or does he go? Jason's already away. It's kind of the two young assets at the club at the moment. It's just the way it is. Hearts were the same, weren't they? Patterson, Nicholson, Walker. Although Jamie's, I know, that tiny wee bit older, but it's the same. I think these clubs, albeit there are clubs, because I know these are Hearts boys, and then they're clubs that we love, but you're always going to lose your best players. It's just the way it is, especially if they're really good. You could have good players that potentially are not good enough to go on and play at the Old Firm, or potentially move for money, and then they become a good asset for the team, and potentially boys like Louis and Paul's that have a long period at the club. But I think it's just the way it is, and sadly it was just John's era, the era of the club, that did have so much talent, and it was inevitable one day that a lot of that talent was going to move on.
When you were at Ibrox, you were heavily involved in the run to the AFA Cup final, but we're not going to celebrate Rangers' successes on this podcast.
It's a 2-1.
But that run was notable for the defensive solidity and sort of clean sheet after clean sheet from the outside, which seems like a massive change for yourself, who was used to being in a team that was sort of play quite open football and go toe to toe with the other side. Was that a difficult adjustment for you?
Aye, I think that a lot of people ask when you play your best footy, and I think the season I went to Rangers, my second season, the season I ended up hurting my knee at Rangers, I joined obviously in January. We never won anything, and in that second season, obviously all the way to Manchester, the following season I started off and I felt I was as good as anyone in the country, a bit the same as I did before I went to Rangers that last season at Hibs. Albeit it ended a wee bit sore with John, because I probably never played the best foot in the last few months, but I certainly thought I was playing good footy before that. But I think then as a player, when you play Scotland 21s as well, although I only played maybe 5 or 6 games, typical Scotland, you do have a mindset of being at a club like Hibs. We were toe to toe, like you say, and then all of a sudden we went away with Scotland and we maybe played against Italy or whatever, and all of a sudden we had to be a wee bit more robust. Yeah. So I had that make-up in me already. You then go to Rangers and all of a sudden you're better than the rest, so you can go toe-to-toe again, you can be a wee bit more relaxed in the respect that you dominate the ball, you maybe didn't need to do as much as you do at Hibs, tracking back and doing different stuff, so your game changes slightly. The European thing was a new ball game in the fact that all of a sudden you were playing against players that were far better than you, yet every single week you felt as though you were probably one of the best players. So the difficulty of playing against someone that was better than you is hard to try and, I don't know what to grasp as such. When you know somebody's fitter than you, stronger than you, and they're better than on the ball, it's a bit demoralising. So sadly for us that was the case. near enough every single team we played against in Europe did have better individual players for us, but when it come to team and being robust and, like you say, parking the bus, whatever way people want to say, defensive masterclass, tactical genius and Walter Smith, we just seemed to have the level of player that was good enough to execute Walter's plan, and thankfully it got us all the way to Manchester.
Right, another one that's become topical, like Stephen has with rejoining Hibs recently. You encountered Kyle Lafferty in your time at Ibrox. Discuss.
Big laugh. He is a big laugh. He's a great boy. He really is. I got on really well with him. I actually done an interview not too long ago about him for the Evening News, and I said he was a bit like Scotty, like wanted to be the dressing room clown and the kind of one that people would laugh at, and all the jokes were kind of on laugh, but I think he just had a bit too much too soon, in the respect, money, big club, goldfish bowl like people call, playing for the old firm, the recognition probably just got on top of him a wee bit. That can be off the pitch in the respect of women, betting, horses, people latching onto you that want a wee piece of you. I think it just come a wee bit too soon for him, and I think his footy suffered for that. I think deep down he was always a real good player, and I think when he sorted himself out, I think probably more so when he did leave Rangers, although he did have some massive games and he really could be a handful on his day, he probably never had as good a career as he would like to. If he could rewrite it, I think he would do things different. But as for a boy and natural talent and just being the right shape, the right size, the right, I don't know what the right stride pattern, he'd be a good footy player. He had everything natural. Laugh. Probably the worst trainer I've ever played with in my life. If you watched him train, you wouldn't give him a game for People's Thistle, but he just had something that was natural, and he, as for a boy in the changing room, he'll bring a lot of laughs and jokes to that Hearts changing room, and as a Hibby, I thought when he was linked with Hibs, I would have been delighted to see him go to Easter Road. I think Hearts did have a disappointing season last year, but signing Christoph and bringing in Kyle, I think they've certainly had two real coups there, and it certainly bode well for them for this season.
Okay, moving on.
As long as the Hibees beat them.
Moving on for the Ibrox, so we can be a wee bit more effusive now. We don't have to worry about keeping a negative slant on everything. Your move on for Ibrox came, it seems, as a bit of a surprise. It came a bit out of left field. Were you clued in at all at that stage as to that actually a desperate need for money was sort of the driver behind it?
It was, and I still remember phoning Walter, and Keith Jackson, same again, had phoned me, and I said to him I didn't particularly want to leave, and he was like, didn't he leave, and didn't he be going to Middlesbrough, and blah blah blah. And he not so much putting words in my mouth, but did he think that I was saying that I was getting pushed out the door? But it come across like that in the interview, and Walter wasn't particularly happy about it. So when he phoned me and I was on my way back up the road from Middlesbrough, he just basically said, look, we can't afford to keep you. And that didn't mean they can't afford to keep me as in like they would have to sack me or can he move me on. They just meant they couldn't afford to keep me and offer me what Middlesbrough were potentially going to offer me. So he said, look, if you're not happy, then go. If we're not forcing you to leave. But it did feel a wee bit like the club were desperate for money, and it felt a bit surreal being in the situation of winning the double. I think I played 43, 44 games that year. I felt as though I was proper becoming a fan's favourite and really appreciated at the club within the players at a good age, 25, 26, to then get sold for a couple £1 million to a championship team. It just felt a wee bit out of the blue and a wee bit of a sucker punch. Everything obviously come to fruition a year down the line when you probably realise that that's why you did get sold. But at the time, same again, crystal ball, if I could rewrite history, I wouldn't go to Middlesbrough because it was the worst thing that ever happened to me. But it could have been the best. These are the chances you take as a footy player, and having bad injuries, 2 cruciate ligament injuries at 25, 26 year old, to run the risk of going into my last year of my contract or signing a 4-year contract at Middlesbrough that gave me security for life was kind of the options that I had on the table.
You mentioned there about the fact that Middlesbrough didn't work out for you, but are you glad looking back that you weren't caught up in what some of the other Rangers players you played with were, which is that they're now hated despite everything they did for the club just because of the way they left it?
Aye, and I did, being a Middlesbrough player and being a friend of Whitty, when I seen Whitty and Nazy come out and do what they done, I did think it was a bit bizarre. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, I'd back Whit to the hilt, but he's I know the Rangers fans didn't particularly like him. if he hadn't done that interview, he would be well thought of. Played in the exact same era I did at a successful time. Some fans will understand and some won't. It's just the way you are, and to be honest, I don't think it'll bother Whitty too much. But I am glad when the shit hit the fan's the right word, but when it did hit the fan, to have to go through what I knew, obviously still speaking to Whitty regularly, what the players were having to go through, and non-stop meetings with administrators and people coming in and telling them to do this, to do that, and different advice off different lawyers and players union and all this. It was quite a refreshing situation not to be in, and kind of watch it from afar, albeit at a club that you did have a great association with, and you felt really, really sad for that they were going to have to go through what they were going through.
What sold you on Middlesbrough in the end? Was it the fans, the chance to finally hook up with Gordon Strachan? Was it the fact that you knew there was no option in Scotland for you to go, so it was the closest to home still?
Well, it sounds almost greedy to first move to go for to Hibs to Rangers and get to stay at home and travel through every day to then the first English club you go to. Same again, you can, although we never commuted, but we could come up the road whenever we wanted. You're only 2.5 hour drive up the road. I think the security was the one thing that I did think at 25, if I run the risk of playing one last season with Rangers, and Rangers couldn't match my ambition and giving me the contract that I felt like I deserved, a contract that still, it wasn't like I was demanding to be the highest paid player, I was just wanting to get up kind of alongside some of the higher earners at the club. I was probably second tier. I felt as though I could get up to first tier, alongside boys like Barry's, and do you know what I mean? Same again, without saying, I want to be paid the same as Barry Ferguson, but Barry had left by then anyway. But with boys like Pedro Mendes, Steve Davis, Lee McCulloch, Kenny Mars, the higher earners at the club, I felt like I'd earned my coin to try and have the next stage as such.
Is that about the respect as much as the money? About the club proving that you are valued?
I think when you get to 25, 26 and
money
you play in the team
well.
and you play in the team every single week, and you have other players that it's the nature of the beast. Pedro Mendes is probably one of the best players I played with, if not the best. Steve Davis the same. Big Jig, boys like Kenny, terrific professionals, terrific guys, great players, but I still felt like I was as important as they were. And when you're 21, you find your place in the changing room, and you're on the ladder. When you get to kind of a senior pro and one of the ones that, Walter was speaking to me as being the next captain and taking over Barry's mantle, albeit Davey was the captain at the time. I felt like the offer should reflect where I felt I was as important to the team, without being greedy. I've never been greedy. Played for nothing for 10 months, do you know what I mean? It's money is important, but it's not the be all and end all. You like to feel like you're paid what you deserve, i.e. players always find out what other players earn. If you're a bit short of that and you feel as though you're just as important as them, if not more important, then when contract negotiations come up, you always use other people as bargaining tools to try and get as much as you can. It's just the way the industry works. So I just felt it was a risk to be a free transfer and run the risk of playing a whole season with only having a year left on my contract, to then having one on the table, like I say, that gave me security for life. So that was a decision that I had with my wife and my dad, what he thought, what Scotty thought. I asked kind of the close people in my life that what their advice would be, and everybody kind of said the same, to take an opportunity and go down the road and make sure number one's looked after.
Would it be fair to say that you were underwhelmed with England?
To be honest, Middlesbrough fans would laugh, but I genuinely thought the Championship was average, and I've said it before. I think there's a lot of overhyped players down there. I think our Rangers team, our Hibs team, a young Hibs team, I think 3 or 4 years, if that team had stayed together, it would compete in the Championship easily. I think a lot of the players, apart from probably myself, you look at Whitty's played in the Premier League, David Murphy played in the Premier League, and you look at some of the boys that went down, Gary Caldwell's played in the Premier League. There are loads of players in Scotland that you could argue maybe weren't even top of the tree in Scotland and went down there and done really well. Barry Ferguson played the year at Birmingham Premier League. Baz obviously a great player up here, don't get me wrong, but there's loads of players that have went down there and done really, really well. There's loads of English players that have come up here and really, really struggled. I'm obviously one of the Scottish ones that went down there and didn't do particularly well, but to play 17 games out of my first 19 with a broken leg, and still get abuse off Middlesbrough fans for being a kind of an expensive dud is it cannot no stick in the back of your throat. It's just the way it is, and we're just going to have to beg to differ that they thought I was hopeless, and I thought Middlesbrough effectively ruined my career and ruined what I'd worked really hard for to build up a big reputation, and I'd like to think it was only ruined off the back of playing 17 games with a broken leg for a team that I could have sued if I wanted to. I had advice to do it, but I wanted to try and be a success down there, and try and be as good as I possibly could to show everybody that I could handle it down there. And in the end, I kind of run out of legs and run out of steam, and hence the reason why I had to come back up the road.
There is a general feeling in the game nowadays that every player's ambition is to test themselves in England. Do you think, looking back, hindsight's an exact science, but looking back, had you not gone to Middlesbrough and ended your career never having played in England, do you think you would have regretted never going? I think
I would, with boys like Nazies and Steve Davis and Baz, Whitties, a lot of the players that Hutton, McGregor, I know Griggs is a goalie, so it's hard to kind of say him, but a lot of the players, Pedro, Carlos Cuellar, I don't know if Bagheera ever played in the Premier League. I think he did. He was just at Sheffield Wednesday and that. Davy Weir obviously played in the Premier League. A lot of the boys that Lee McCulloch could rattle off a lot. Charlie Adams. Don't know if Chris Burke ever played in the Premier League, but there's so many players in that era, that Rangers squad, that played in the Premier League and done well in the Premier League. And I'd like to think I held my own with any of them when we were on a level playing field. I think that's one thing I didn't hold on to it as like, oh, that's my wee bit that I want to hold on, that I can prove that I'm as good as anyone else. But I think having a crack at the whip and having a real clean run of health and having a proper sustained period, the times that I did do that, I was on the end of everybody's tongue. Yet the one thing that everybody thinks about my career is the injury problems that I had, and some people see that as a hard luck and you're a wee bit unlucky, and other people see it as like I said earlier, you're a glass vase and you wanted to spend so much time in the treatment room. It's just the way it is. You can't change that, and I wish I'd just had a tiny wee bit better crack at the whip, whether it had been one season in the Championship where I could have played 40-45 games and showed everybody what I could do. But sadly for me, I think 5 or 6 games on the bounce was the most I ever played.
You then agreed your release from Middlesbrough and went to train with Hibs. How does that come about? It's something that you see loads as a supporter, players, former players or random boys just pitching up and suddenly training with a club. How does it happen? Because managers of clubs seem to change every 6 months. Who do you make contact with at Hibs to go along and train?
I obviously had a good relationship with Rod, going through trying to negotiate an extra £5 a week off him for all the years, and I'd actually, hand on heart, as honest as I am, I never ever thought of going back to Hibs when I first left Middlesbrough. And it's nothing against Hibs, because everybody knows how much I thought of the club, but I obviously thought I would potentially have better financial offers, better offers, kind of at a better level. In the respect, Pat was, it wasn't like an era that fans would look back that fondly on. So it wasn't like joining a vibrant team like it potentially is now, or even under Alan, when, you know what I mean, it was the only opportunity to go back was the era that it was in. And when I went in and trained, I still remember phoning Dad on the way back when I asked Rod if it was alright, and he said, look, here's Pat's number, I'll mark Pat's card, you can give him a phone and ask if he come in and train. I didn't see it being a problem. When I went in and trained, I was really disappointed with what was in the current squad, and I didn't mean that disrespectful to any players, but it felt like the club was really stale, totally different from the club that I left. Yet they had East Mains, they had the club. For me, it seems, as a young boy, social media, the way footy is, the coverage it gets, it just seems to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Record season ticket, I know that's off the back of winning the Scottish Cup, but it just seems to be that the younger generations are starting to go to the games. And when I went back, it just felt an amazing facility, yet nobody really appreciated it. It just felt as though it was a special thing at a special club that people just kind of took for granted. And I'd never really thought of signing for Pat, albeit he was great with me, lovely man, proper gentleman. And in the end, I thought about sitting in the house until the summer to weighing up my options and having a wee break, trying to get my legs right and being fit. And then the fairy tale of still being in the Scottish Cup was playing on my mind every time I sip my coffee at night time, thinking that it might just meant to be. And a few offers that I had fell through, and I phoned Pat and said to him, could you fancy letting me play for the last 10 games or whatever? And he said, I'd beg you to play. And I ended up signing him.
there had been some pretty high profile episodes of players playing for free across the city at the time. Did you bring up the idea of playing for nothing?
No, Rod just told me that he can't how much money I earned at Middlesbrough, so he didn't want to pay me. I just said to him, he just said, look, we beg you to play, why not come and help us out to the end of the season? And look, you're not going to sign here next season anyway, because you'll be going and playing for somebody bigger and better. Just use it as a kind of stepping stone. And I was like, I didn't want to be rude to the club and think that that's what I was doing, but like I say, being the kind of greedy Hibs fan that I am, that I thought, still in the semi-final against Falkirk, albeit we had a shiter for 45 minutes, and then obviously we never really laid a glove on Celtic in the final. But when you get an opportunity playing a semi-final for Hibs, knowing the history of the club and getting a chance to play in a Scottish Cup final, it was a no-brainer. I couldn't even tell you who we played in the league that year. The only thing I was fixed on was trying to win that cup and having the wee fairy tale that everybody thinks that they're due, and it could be them, it could be your time, and I was no different. But it did feel, for whatever reason, under Pat and especially under Rod, knowing that when the players do come back, the ones like myself, I'd like to discuss what Whitty's just signed for, but he'll certainly not be getting the top dollar that people would expect him to get, because that's the way Rod is with the boys. He's delighted to have us all back at the club, but he's certainly not going to break the bank for you, knowing that the boys have went on and done quite well for themselves.
Did it feel like you were repairing some of the... Obviously there was some damage done with the way you had left the club. Did that play on your mind in terms of agreeing to play for free at all? Did you think, well, I can build a couple of bridges here?
Aye, 100%. Like I said, I just negotiated a payoff from Middlesbrough. The money wasn't really an issue for me. What Rod offered me was a personal bonus for winning the Scottish Cup. He was going to pay me more than what the players were getting paid. My weekly wage was £10, because you have to register for the SFA, so it has to be £10. Or so he told me. I was saying, can you give me 20? So the I forgot what I was going to say there. What did you say there again?
About basically repairing the
relationship. And that's when it did come out, and the first game that I sat on the bench, because they struggled to get my registration through in time, was this time that Lee Griffiths hit the crossbar, and it was about 5 yards over the line, actually hit the net and come back out, and it's still...
I'm sure I've seen a photo of that when it didn't cross.
They're still debating it now. And I was on the bench, and obviously I come on for the last 2 or 3 minutes at the end, and the ovation that I got was unbelievable. And sometimes when you're a player, and I still feel it the day, and I didn't want anyone to feel sorry for me, because it's not the way I live my life, but I always felt like the Hibs fans, because of that, the M8 thing, and because I'd played for Rangers, and the way I did leave in the first time, you never feel like the Hibs fans really loved you the way you think they did at times, if you know what I mean. But to get that ovation, to get the ovation I got when Terry Butcher finally put me on against Hamilton, and kind of the realisation that fans did think you were a good player, and they did like you, is what any player wants. Even more so at a club that is the club that I take my boys along to watch the team, and they've just got season tickets. You know what I mean? It's and I didn't say that because I want a pat on the back, because I didn't deserve any other right to what any other fan does that pays to go and support the team. That's effectively what I am now. But if you have been a player at a team that you do support, you do want to have a wee bit more, I don't know, not so much appreciation, because the fans appreciate every player, but you just want, I think, to be as well thought of as you possibly can be. You
mentioned earlier the drop in quality that you noticed in that Hibs squad that you came back to. Was that, who would you blame? It's not about laying blame at anyone's door, but was Pat Fenlon partly at fault for that?
I think it was just the market that the club were in at the time. And I still remember, and it's no bad mouthing boys like Tudor Jones and Liam Craigs and that, because Tudor played 30 odd games for Terry Butcher's team before he signed for Hibs. The season I ended up signing a full 1 year contract, and Liam Craig had done terrifically well at St Johnstone. I just think, I might be wrong, I want to be the manager of Hibs one day. I think it takes a certain player and a certain character and a certain style to be successful at Hibs. I think it's just the Hibs way, albeit I think some fans didn't quite know what the Hibs way is at times, but I just think Pat Fenlon great with me, different class as a man, and a really good coach. I think Jimmy Nicholl coming in a wee bit too late was a hindrance for him. I think if it had Jimmy in quicker, it would have helped. Liam O'Brien at times could be negative towards the players, and when you're under pressure at a big club like Hibs, when the fans are starting to grumble a wee bit like they do at both Edinburgh clubs, some players can cope with that and some can't, and I think the players that Pat brought in found it difficult to cope with the expectations of a big club like Hibs, because Hibs and Hearts are huge clubs. I think they're probably bigger than Middlesbrough, and people would laugh at that, but the recognition players get up here in Edinburgh, and the fans that actually go around, like the Championship, I played in front of 12,000 at Middlesbrough, and the stadium felt half empty, yet Hibs and Hearts, they both get that every week and they bother, if not more. So I would argue, not just because I'm a fan, that the clubs are as big as a lot of clubs in the English Championship. I just think for whatever reason, Pat, the players he signed, I think he was looking to sign solid pros to kind of complement the next wee batch that was coming through: Harris, Hanlon, Foster, Caldwell, and I just think they players could have done with help themselves rather than being the ones that were trying to help the young boys, and it just never seemed to work.
Hindsight's 2020 because we know what came next, but was Pat Fenlon a bit harshly treated?
Well, I think Pat wanted to leave, and I think it is gospel that he, the board wanted him to stay. The night that Ryan Stevenson scored in the cup during the week, and the first demonstration, protest type thing outside the stadium, I think Pat wanted to win that night and leave, and hopefully leave off the back of a good result, and hopefully I think he felt that the fans were harsh on him, and I would as well, and the fact that we were an average team, probably doing average, with average players. The club had been on an average run for quite a few years. I just think that when you're a fan and you go off the back of getting beat 5-1 by your arch rivals, and you then didn't hit the ground running, I think we're going to be in the same situation with Pedro. He's in exactly the same position as what Pat's going to be like. Massive defeat in an Old Firm, poor result in Europe. They need to start really, really quick, and Pat was a wee bit like that, and we did huff and puff. The players that he brought in had myself, Scott Robertson, Tudor Jones, Liam Craig, 4 centre midfield players playing 4 across the middle. It just never worked. Wee Boozy hurting his ankle, who was the only speed that we had in the team, and that's no excuses for Pat. It's just the players that he signed. I just think the squad that he assembled, which has to be on his head as such. It's only the way it works. Being a manager, I think he's quite happy to take that responsibility. The players never complemented each other, and we were just an average squad with average players, and I think we've done average.
Okay, moving on for Pat Fenlon. It's easy to forget now, but at least for the outside, in terms of media reaction, Terry Butcher's arrival at Easter Road was met with a pretty positive reaction. What was the initial reaction to his appointment in the dressing room?
Well, Tudor Jones obviously had just worked under him and had obviously been desperate to get away from him, which kind of didn't bode a good picture, because Tudor had probably played the best footy he had played and probably had the most recognition. Not many people knew who he was. I know he was a Welsh international, so it's probably a wee bit disrespectful, but I certainly never knew who he was. My pals that actually go every week, when I played against them at Inverness, the first season when I played for free, they said, would you sign Jones? And I was like, who's Jones? And they was like, the big boy number 6 in the middle of the pitch, and I'm like, nah, no for me. And I just, being a centre midfield player and playing up against him, I think apart from walking out the tunnel together, he never really got near us all game. Yeah, they beat us 2-0, so you could say that I never maybe got near him. But when he started to tell us that Terry was this and he was that, and his training and the way he is with the boys and some of the things that he does, his meetings and his team talks and blah 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 blah, the boys were kind of like huffing and puffing a wee bit, thinking, what's this? But he come with a reputation that he was a winner, and like any manager, just because you hear it off of another player, you'd be wrong, and you wouldn't be or I wouldn't be the person, because I never had a perception of him when he come. I just expected him to be this kind of hardened, angry manager that would kick doors down that he'd done, because I've seen him kick Easter Road door, but when he was at Inverness, I think he got fined, he had to pay for it or something at one time, so it's kind of common knowledge that that's the way he was as a manager. I knew his teams were always direct, they were always hard working, they were always robust, but I could be whatever I wanted to be. I felt so. I just thought I would kind of go with the flow and see how we kind of they come in and kind of spoke to the boys and how we got treated really.
With a breath of fresh air, then quickly transitioned into Hurricane Terry. Butcher's losing the dressing room has become a bit of a thing of legend, to be honest, and in that legend you've got a relatively central role. What exactly happened?
When he first come in, we were due to have an international break because obviously Scotland had fixtures. I don't know who against, but Pat had said to give us the Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday off, which is quite common at a lot of clubs in Scotland. Some get longer, some get less, but Pat had gave us the Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday off. So when Terry come in, he says I'll agree to give you the same rota as what that Pat's gave you. We'll train Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and you can have Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday off. So on that Tuesday, we trained, and training was typical. Any new manager coming in, albeit a manager that comes in that has a bit blood and thunder background, training was colour ball, do you know what I mean? Tackles flying everywhere, waist high, and it was just 500 mile per hour. Tuesday he pulled me into his office and asked me what I thought of all the players, what I thought of Pat, what I thought of our strikers, what I thought of our defence. He told me that I was probably one of the best players in the country, that I was probably the best passer of the ball in the country. The only thing he would like me to do is get it forward a wee bit earlier. And I said aye, and I left thinking that he was just going to let me do my thing. He told me that he thought our strikers were shite.
Wouldn't disagree.
And they'll not be shite under him because he'll get them running around. He said that he thought Hefferman was the best of the bunch. We had James Collins at the time, Ross Caldwell. Hef probably was the one that was probably playing a wee bit more than the others, and I thought he would let me be. And then we come in a normal week, trained well, trained Tuesday, off Wednesday, and then we trained on Thursday, and he done this line game. He done every Thursday where he would play his team that he was playing at the weekend against the rest, and obviously he'd shouted out the names, which we just thought it was a game because we'd never seen it before. And Big Tudor was in my team, and he said, "By the way, you're not playing at the weekend." And I said, "Aye, wait there." And he was like, "You know," he says, "That's the team." He says, "This is what he does on a Thursday." And I was like, "No way." He was like, "I'm serious, you're not playing." And in the space of me not playing, and Liam Craig never playing centre mid in his life, to within 10 days being named the new club captain, who was now playing in my central mid left role, I might as well knew that I wasn't going to play, because he's not going to drop the captain to then play me. And I sat on the bench for the first 3 games. After 3 games I chapped his door and asked him why I wasn't playing, like any player. And he told me that the door was never shut, that an opportunity would arise for me. And I says, well, everybody else is getting an opportunity but me. And he told me that I wasn't fit enough. And I says, well, sadly that's not very good, because if I'm not fit enough now at Christmas or whenever he come in, November or whatever it was, and I'd played every single game under Pat apart from a suspension when I got sent off against Dundee United, I was never going to be fit. So I kind of said, so what should I do? And he said, just keep on training, keep on working hard, and it escalated from there.
Did you feel similarities between that and the Collins scenario? Did you feel the same thing?
It was funny because I see all the reports that, and to be fair, Malpass has come out and said that they'd done it all wrong, and at one stage he was sticking to his guns that the senior players were a problem, and then the players have come out and slagged them off, and I've never slagged them off. I got on quite well with Mo, because he used to help Rayner Bonoff. The problem is with Mo at 21s with Rayner Bonoff. Rayner was the manager and he was all about passing it, and he loved me and Scotty. So Mo never had a leg to stand on, and Mo's drills were based around passing the ball, and he couldn't shout at me and Bruni for passing it, or any other Scotland under 21 player, because that's what Rayner wanted. To then get him as an assistant manager under Terry, and the only thing he used to shout was to fucking get it forward early. I actually used to hear him say punt it, which is criminal, but each for their own. They were successful up at Inverness, they weren't very successful anywhere else. I've nothing against them. He treated me like a twat, to be honest, but it's I was big enough and ugly enough to deal with it. I still put my head down every single day. I tried to bite my tongue as much as I could. I certainly wasn't any involvement on senior players showing disrespect for them. He showed disrespect to near enough every player in there. He told every single player that they could leave when he was due to leave himself. So I didn't think that any player done any worse than what he'd done to them. And just sadly, of course he would do it all again, wouldn't he? And he'd do it differently because he failed. And that's the reality, and that's the fact. What he done was trying to create something that was never going to be possible at a club like Hibs.
How do you feel as a player when you've been told you can leave, you've been treated like shite for 6 months, and then when the chips are down against Hamilton, suddenly he wants you to go on?
Well, I always felt quite proud, and I said it to Dad, and I said it to my wife, that when I did get back in the team, bear in mind we weren't doing particularly well, and we never really won a game, whether I was in the team or I wasn't. But on a personal note, which was no satisfaction for me, winning man of the matches at Easter Road, and having to do an interview in front of Grant Stock, getting beaten at Derby, and really feeling upset and feeling like you were carrying the club on your shoulders for a man that treated you like a twat, knowing that if I'd done well for him and the team done well, I was probably going to be leaving and he was going to be staying. Yet for me, as a professional and as a person, I'd done nothing but give my best for him. The same man that used to run me in the afternoon on my own, I still knuckled down, and when he asked me to play and try and deliver for him, I gave him my all. I'd like to think that's an accolade for me as a person, but I certainly didn't want a pat on the back for it. I just wanted the best for the club. The best for the club meant me trying my best for him and for the club and for my teammates, and that's what I'd done. And I think deep down he'd know that, and I think deep down he'd know he made mistakes. And I think he was, from start to finish, it was nothing but a disaster.
Does that day at Easter Road against Hamilton go down alongside the couple of major injuries you had as the worst day of your career?
Aye, and it's bad because I'd never took a penalty in my life. And same again, look, I'm a Hibs fan, I'm a thinker, that's the way I am as a person. And when we went to penalties, I would take another one tomorrow. I think Hibs fans probably wouldn't want me to take one, but I just felt that I was a leader. I felt even like Liam Craig, the captain of the club, the last kind of few months when the fans were getting on players' backs and they were starting to Malpasses turning around and arguing with fans behind the dugout, and everybody was feeling the strain. I was there for Liam, and I think even Liam wanted me to play in his position. I think that's what the players thought of me in there. Maybe they didn't, sorry, but that's the way I felt. And amongst the team, I felt like a lot of the players looked up to me, a lot of the younger players, and I think it backfired with Terry trying to treat me like the kind of class clown, in the respect that a lot of the young boys looked up to me. To then get treated like that, basically they didn't like that, because I was the one that they hopefully wanted to try and aspire to move on and have the kind of career that I had. Who wants to take a penalty? I was on his chest. I wanted to take one first. I wanted to get us off to a good start, and I would do it again tomorrow. I'd not like to miss again tomorrow, but it's just the way I was as a person. And probably Hibs fans would rather I was a bit like what I was like in the League Cup and UEFA Cup, and I didn't want to take one. But it was. I just felt that the way the whole however many months it had been under him, 7 or 8 months, that it come down to this crunch day at Easter Road against Hamilton, and I had to stand up and be counted. And like I say, I would do it all over again, because I felt I was a leader in the changing room, and I felt the lads need us to stand up and show we a bit of heart and take one for the team.
There was a bit of consternation about what happened next, which was that, at least from the outside, Terry Butcherd was allowed to pick and choose who he wanted to stay, and then was punted himself about a week later. Is that how it went from the players' side?
A lot of managers, know them all, but 9 times out of 10 managers, if you just say you play on a Saturday, you would normally have a night out, obviously, with the team on a Saturday night, and some managers would have you in on a Sunday morning and kind of do the high and buys and kind of season kind of preview and what's expected next season, whether you're going to be part of the team or whatever, just a kind of wee general chat. The majority of managers do it. Terry done it. I don't know whether it was on I think the player final was a Sunday, wasn't it? It was on the Monday. Done it on the Monday, and obviously we were in, and he just come in and kind of smiling and that in the morning, and said, just come one by one. Whoever wants to come first, and there was only half a dozen of us in, and the kind of boys went, you go first, and I was like, cool, so I went first. And even his chat to me then was everything that you would expect of what it had been like for the 7 or 8 months. Told me that the club obviously are now going to be in a financial difficulty, and contracts would be limited, and they basically couldn't afford to keep me. And I just said, no bother, mate, thanks for everything, I'll see you later. That's basically our whole chat in the space of a minute, if that, 30 seconds. And I left thinking, he didn't have the heart to look me in the eye and tell me that, look, I can't keep you on, I don't want you. You're not part of my plans, so you can beat it type thing. Because effectively, I was out of contract. He had no alliance to me. But the fact that he told me that he couldn't afford me for a club that I played for nothing for 10 months was just an escalation to how our relationship went.
Do you think things might have worked out differently for yourself had Alan Stubbs already been in to have those meetings?
I think so. I think Alan, I'd like to think he would have kept me in a heartbeat. Bear in mind, I went and signed for a Premier League team that I was captain of. I'd like to think I was good as anyone up at Dundee. The Hibs were going to be playing in a terrible league, in the respect that they had a strong Jambos team and a strong Rangers team vying to get out of the league when really only one can get out, or two potentially going through the playoffs, but everybody knows how difficult it is to get through them. So I thought that at 28, 29 year old, I really thought that I could have been a big help to the club, trying to get the club back to where I wanted to get to. But Dundee were desperate to sign me, and I had options down the road. I had options abroad, and Dundee, same again, was one at that stage in my career that I could travel to every day. That was a big thought behind me and the wife talking about where I should go and what I should do. Young family, I wanted to try and get to a club that I could travel at. That was even a factor behind first signing with Pat. The second time I signed with him, like the official time. So that was my mindset, that I wanted to stay somewhere local in Dundee, kind of tick the boxes, and they wanted me to get in as quick as possible so they could use my name to try and sign other players that were not too sure. So I think if Alan had been in quicker, I'd like to think I would have potentially had a wee bit longer at the club.
You had a real resurgence at Dundee. Was that because the team seemed to be pretty much built around you?
Aye, Paul. We never obviously got on particularly well in Edinburgh derbies or old firms, but we always got on well when we went to Scotland camps, and he always had respect for us, and vice versa. Especially that year he played at Hearts when I think he scored just under 20 goals or whatever it was, 18, 19 goals. He was a bloody bugger to play against. And he probably, that was probably one of his defining moments in his career that season. He really was probably, I don't know, did he win Player of the Year that year? He would have at Hearts, but I don't know if he did actually the overall Scotland, did he not? Because he was one of the players that he was so horrible to play against, especially being a defensive midfielder. I was always the one that had to track him into the box, and he just made that many runs. But when I went up to Dundee, he treated me like a king. Made me obviously captain straight away, and as you say, built the team around me, made me feel good again, and the kind of hangover and the horrible taste in your mouth for what Terry created had quickly gone, and I just looked forward to what I'd done every summer and tried to get myself in as best shape as possible to then try and help a new club.
So moving on for Dundee, like we say, you had a successful spell there, but you've got another spell at Hibs to talk about. We've been going quite a long time, so we'll move on quite quickly. How did your release for Dundee and going back to Hibs come about?
Well, me and Paul in the end, I think he got a wee bit frustrated. The team was starting to struggle, and I was spending a wee bit more time in the treatment room, and I think our relationship just got strained. The same I would with Paul if he was one of my best players and he was my captain, and every other week he was spending a week or two in the treatment room. I think the first season, it was the fairy tale season for Dundee. We won the first derby in 10 or 11 years. We finished top 6 off the back of them just getting promoted. Albeit we never had a very good run in the cup, but Dundee have never been renowned for going all the way in cup. So we had a good solid season under Paul off the back of them winning the championship. The second season, my injuries just started to come a wee bit more frequent, and I become a wee bit less available. And I said to him that the travelling in the car, the time just leading into Christmas, I think November, December, the Forth Road Bridge was shut, and we had to go Kingston Bridge, and it sounds almost like being spoilt, but sitting 2.5 hours in the car every morning to then get in a minibus to then go onto a bog to train, and then sit in the car for another 2 hours after, it was just draining on me. And obviously a lot of the times I was sitting in the changing room, or sitting in the physio room, or working in the gym to try and get fit. It was a difficult period mentally for me, to be honest. And I just got frustrated, and I think he got frustrated, and then when I come back I would play really well, and then I had a wee buzz again, and then a week later I'd be injured, and I just told him I'd had enough, and when I told him I had enough, I got a surprise phone call, to be honest. Word gets around on it. I certainly never had anything lined up with Alan or with Hibs. I genuinely thought I would call it a day. I was quite happy to cross that bridge one day anyway, and when Alan phoned me, it kind of gave me a wee spring in my step, and when he asked me to meet him for a coffee, I said to him now. I wanted to meet him then. He's like, no, I'm busy today, like, but he said, I'll maybe meet you tomorrow. I says, all right, it's cool. And when I met him, he gave me that wee buzz that what I could bring to the changing room with such a young squad, the professionalism that I bring, hopefully a bit like what we touched on, what Whitty's going to bring earlier. It was a no-brainer. It was a no-lose situation for me, whether I played or never, to be back at the club for another few months, and same again with the opportunity to do a wee bit of coaching.
How different was it at Easter?
It was one of the best changing rooms I've been in. A different changing room compared to like a Rangers changing room, but a changing room that reminded me of being a youth team player again, being in with like Keatons, Cummins, great characters, great lads, and even like the so-called older generation of that crew, your Louis, Pauls, Dave Grays, Daz McGregor, Fonts, they were kind of the older boys, with me being at the top end of that. It was just a great changing room to be in. Alan was the type of manager like what Tony was a bit like. I was at a different stage in my career. I never wanted to be Alan's best mate. He was my manager. I was quite happy just to say morning gaffer and get on with my thing. When you're younger, your Jasons, your Johns, Boyleys, Cummies and that, they want the manager to give them a cuddle. That's just the way you are. I was the same with Tony, and Alan done that for them, and I think that's why they all thought so highly of him. He created a nice atmosphere, a nice place to go and work, and I think a lot of the players really, really appreciated what club they were playing for.
That season is obviously defined by a cup run, but there was actually 2 cup runs in that season, and you played.
Shock! I played in the one that got beaten.
Well, I didn't want to put it exactly like that, but seeing as you've done it,
I'll see it.
What are your memories of that game?
The one that we got beat.
Aye. How disappointing was it for you?
Just typical, and the fact that I had obviously, I actually thought I'd done alright in the game, and even when I watched it back, I still believe I'd done alright. But it was, I don't know if you can see me on the camera, I don't know if I'm swearing or no, but it was in almost like a typical bloody me, do you know what I mean, without saying that, with a few F words in there, when I obviously play a wee lazy pass, and Stokes probably could have helped me out, and then obviously they break away and they score, and Marv's a wee bit unlucky, but it just felt that I always felt a pressure on me, and probably put more pressure on me in reality, that when the club got beat in a league game, cup game, never mind a cup final, it used to always feel like it was my fault. And I genuinely didn't think it was, and I think if you asked 100 fans, they probably wouldn't say it was my fault, but it just was always a pressure and a perception that I used to give myself, and I kind of carried that whole day on my shoulders to then get beat, even though I was off the park when Font sadly made the mistake as well. It was just such a, I don't know if it's the right way to say it, but it was typical being a Hibs fan, wasn't it, that we just fell at the final hurdle again, and so much expectation, and such a great day, sunshine thing went in, and all of a sudden you watch Ross County celebrate, and rightly so, you know what I mean, deservedly winners, celebrate in front of 7,000 or 8,000 people there when we filled 3/4 of the stadium. It just seemed to be the Hibs way, didn't it, that we used to always kind of fall at the last hurdle, and sadly for me I had 3 different occasions of that.
How much do you think that experience played on it, what happened a couple of months later though, when the team showed the steel that a lot of people didn't think it had?
I think the Ross County game, possession, stats, the performance, individual performances, Hibs fans see, and I'm the same, see an amazing day and the best day of lots of people's lives, but in reality the actual game, and look, the only thing that matters in a cup final is the result, but I would think as a team in a performance we probably played better against Ross County than the team did against Rangers. Apart from Stokes that day, who would have ripped any team in the country, a new backside as such, you know what I mean, he genuinely could have scored 6 or 7 goals. I think if he had scored 4 or 5, it probably would have just typified how good he was on the day. To only get 2 is probably a wee bit unlucky for him, but for Hibs' eyes, he's a hero and he's a legend, and I just think that the day is overwhelmed by what the history is for the club, and he'd be a tiny part of that, albeit sitting in the stand, was just one of the most special days you'd ever get in your life.
What was it like being back involved in the Edinburgh Derby that season, in the Scottish Cup, massive Edinburgh Derbies, 12, 13 years on for your initial.
I know. Well, obviously coming on as a sub for the first one when we were obviously 2-0 down to draw 2-2, I know a lot of fans think that was the defining moment of going on and winning the cup. Everybody will have a different view of it, but to obviously be 2-0 down, and I've been there myself before with different Hibs teams, and normally good teams go to Tynecastle and get overawed and kind of overpowered, and the Hearts can blow you away. They've got a knacky within kind of the first 10 to kind of 35 minutes in the first half. They can just blow you away and the game's almost done, and you kind of sit at half time in the changing room thinking, just let's not get trounced. And I think the game was opposite in that the team, although hadn't created many chances, was doing quite well, and Hearts probably only created 2 or 3 chances and scored 2 good goals. The first one for June was a terrific strike, and same again with Sam, good first touch and chopping inside and hitting it through legs into the bottom corner. I think there was a belief in the changing room that was a bit different for some of the other teams that had been at Tynecastle, and looking around the changing room, a lot of boys felt that they were beat, whereas to be part of that feeling that gave me goosebumps a wee bit, knowing that we were going to go out. Don't get me wrong, I didn't run out the tunnel thinking that we were going to win the day, or we're going to draw, and then we're going to go on and win the Scottish Cup, but I had a feeling in my gut that it was going to be a good day, and thankfully it turned out that way.
Is it just a freedom that team plays with?
I think Alan I think it was the same with our Hibs team, that there's so many young boys that sometimes not knowing what pressure means, and the magnitude of how big games are. I think a lot of the team that won the Scottish Cup that played that day, a lot of them have never played in a game as big in their life, and I think the fact that they never knew how big it was actually going to be helped quite a lot of players. I think if they could now go back and play that game again, and knowing that that's what was going to come, they'd be like, "Phew." It was mind-boggling. But I just think that Alan, some Hibs fans were frustrated, and obviously the Championship, that he was quite patient and he poked and prodded, and he allowed players to kind of not so much play it cumbersome, but they could play lethargic at times, and it could be slow, and that got under fans' wicks at time. I know that because I've got pals that have obviously go to every games, and that was sometimes a general feeling, especially in the Championship. But when it come to cup games, not just because they went all the way, I think if you asked any fan the way they played in cup games, if they could have replicated that in the Championship, then they would have blew that Championship away. But for whatever reason, I think the young players in the squad, when it come to cup games, the big game, the kind of buzz, they found it easier in the stages of their career to motivate themselves for the type of games than it was motivating yourself for bread and butter. You
missed it on the matchday squad for the final pretty late in proceedings when Dylan McGeoch declared himself fit. What was your experience actually like that day? Was that a bit of a flashback to when you did the cruciate the first time and sort of trying to stay involved as a fan?
I think because probably 2 or 3 weeks prior to that, I'd only basically, I think I'd been on the bench once. And then straight back in the stand. I think somebody was struggling, probably Dylan or whatever, and I made it for kind of 19th, but in the 18th I never played. And then me and Danny Hanlon were back in the stand maybe the following week. The Rafe Rover games, the double header, obviously, I was in the stand both games at Rafe, and then obviously Easter Road, the Falkirk games as well. So not so much the writing was on the wall, because I still prepared this exactly the same as I did whether I was playing or I wasn't. And I did say and have the mindset that whatever games I played would be a bonus. I managed to play in 2 derbies and a cup final, and to have a tiny party 21st of May was more than I could ever dreamed of. So I did change my mindset and tried to be as professional. When I sat on the sofa, look, I was like everybody else. I wanted to play, I wanted it for myself, because that's the selfish nature of being a footy player. But I wanted to be the best I could possibly be for the boys, and loads of them wanted advice. For Dylan, no being sure about letting fans down, letting teammates down, letting Alan down. Me knowing that if Dylan never made it, would potentially create a space on the bench for me. I told Dylan that the risk was worth taking. I never said F the fans, I never said F the club, I never said F the players, F the manager, but I said I would play the day with a broken leg. If you have to come off after 10 minutes, come off after 10 minutes. But to not declare yourself fit for this game, me knowing that Dylan brought a lot to the team, was I could only be true to myself and true to Dylan and give him the best advice possible, and that was to tell Alan Stubbs that I'm fit and I'm ready to play, even though that meant for me a wee bit of kick in the teeth, because I probably was going to miss out.
Did you expect to be at the club longer in some capacity?
I did. It's a bit of a sore one for me. When I spoke to Alan, obviously was offered a coaching role, and between the lines, and look, you cannot be disappointed in football because it's just the way it is. It's just what happens. But I was a wee bit disappointed in the respect that when I did go back, I knew that I wasn't going to play much. If I was fit and I was available and I was needed, that Alan obviously said I would play. That what I'd bring would be huge, which was great for me. Any game was a bonus. But to obviously have one eye on if it was a bridge that I wanted to cross to do some coaching, and it was, because when I left Dundee I genuinely was going to retire, so it was a bridge that I wanted to cross straight away. To have an opportunity to do a bit at Hibs was like winning the lottery for me. And to do what I'd done, to juggle training every single day, going in and helping the academy 2-3 nights a week, and sometimes one, sometimes none, just depending on fixtures, but as often as I possibly could. And sometimes go in and watch a game on a Sunday if obviously we never had a game. So it was almost like a 24-hour job to then finish off the season and Alan obviously win the cup and run away to Rotherham and have to ask George Craig and Eddie May and Rod if there was an opportunity for me still to have some capacity coaching, and it'd be down to Eddie May, and George Craig was a wee bit disappointing. But I'm a big boy and I take disappointment on the chin, and I've said it for day one to Rod when I was 19 negotiating a 5-year deal that I want to be the manager at Hibs one day, and nothing will stop me, whether it's Eddie May or George Craig or anyone else. I'm focused to trying to be the best coach I can be, and if I fall short it'll not be through trying.
Your destination that summer when you didn't stay at Hibs was pretty surprising and pretty short-lived, and about 500 yards away from where we are now. What happened at Tranent? How did that come about first off, and why was it so short-lived?
When I was going to obviously retire when I left Hibs, I think I had about 10-12 offers, ranging from full-time to part-time to abroad, and I don't know if it was just I was getting older and I have the kids, and I think maybe if my financial situation had been a lot different, then you would have wanted to keep on playing for as long as you could. I always said that I wanted to retire on my own terms, and rather than being forced or not having an option still to play. And when I left Hibs I was a wee bit sick. I did always tell myself that I was never too big for my boots to play down the leagues, hence the reason why I went to the worst offer that I had on the table in Tranent, and that's nothing against Tranent, but it was the lowest level. I got offered far more money at other clubs, plus two of the Super League teams, one of them won the Super League that offered us more money than Tranent, so I could easily played at a better standard than Tranent, so I certainly wasn't scared to dip my toe into playing at a lower level. I just didn't want to be in a situation where if I was playing senior footy and I was getting frustrated with the kids and myself and kind of the last year or so of my football, I wanted to really enjoy it, and I felt as though dropping down and playing in a team that my mate, one of my real good mates is a local boy, just stays up the road there, and his mate was the manager at Tranent. It just felt right, rather than going to another junior team that I didn't know anyone. I kind of had an alliance, a a pal in the camp, if that's what you want to call it. And obviously Matty, the man that pays the bills at Tranent, is a big Hibs fan, and he begged me every day to sign, and I just felt like there would be the fairy tale ending of trying to give something back and kind of enjoy a year of playing footy with no pressure as such, and kind of just enjoy what you used to play like when you were a kid.
Why did that not happen?
Albeit it never quite worked out like that.
Why was that?
I just think I think the nature of the beast and the professionalism that I've had through my career to what kind of junior players have.
Just a culture shock.
Aye, a wee bit, and I do think the manager, although I get on all right with him now, thought that when I signed, and even I think junior teams have boards and committees that they sometimes pay some of the wages, and they have a feeling that they have a right to have an opinion on the players and how the team play and what teams picked and that. And quite right, I just never knew that before obviously I signed, but I do think that the manager and some of the committee thought that when I signed that I was just going to be Roy the Rover and dribble through every single player and then we're going to win 10-0 every week. Okay. But it just never worked out. I think their expectations of what they were getting and what they got, and my expectations of a club trying to have a plan to being the kind of sleeping giant of junior footy, and great, like I say, loads of local guys still message me on Twitter and that now, that the fact that I wore a Tranent jersey in my career is great for them. And like I say, one of my best mates is free here, his mum and dad just stay up the road as well, so it just sadly never worked out in the respect that I would have liked it to.
Good shout. Right, final question on Hibs. With Stephen returning last week, that now makes it 4 of your group that have returned to Easter Road.
No.
We're also likely to see... that's not where I'm going. We're also likely to
Unless
see...
they win the lottery.
We're also likely to see Anthony Stokes come back and rival you with a third spell at Easter Road, and potentially Liam Henderson. What is it about Hibs that makes players want to go back and play for the club again?
I just think it's a great club, and I've, even as a Hibs fan who would try my best against Hearts and beating Hearts, I just think they're great clubs, and now they've both got great training facilities. They've both in time going to have great stands, great stadiums. It's a great city to live in. I just think any player that's played for Hibs or Hearts will realise how good clubs they are. Whether you've been successful at them or you've been unsuccessful, I think there'll always be a place in your heart. Yet some players play for one club, some players play for many. But I think when you've played for the Edinburgh teams, bearing in mind I've never played for Hearts, but I am a football realist that both clubs are great clubs, the same as the Old Firm. Both clubs are great clubs, and I think that it's just the way it is when you've had an alliance with Hibs and the fans have warmed to you and they've treated you great and you've had maybe a wee bit of success. It's always a bit that when you do potentially like a Stokes that could earn more money and potentially be at a wee bit a bigger club than Hibs, it drags you back, and you could argue that Whitty was a wee bit the same. Probably myself as well when I had different options on the table. It's just a club that grabs you, and I genuinely, even as a Hibs fan, speak that it'll be the same for whether players have played at Hearts or Rangers or Celtic. I think the 4 big clubs in Scotland, I don't know if Aberdeen fans will be particularly happy with that, but the 4 big teams in Scotland, I think they just have a great place in Scottish football that when people do play for them, they've been proud to play for them.
Okay, final question, proper this time. Tell us about your academy. Tell us about what's next for you. What does the future hold?
The academy's tough. It's when I first started it, you would want it to be busy, you would want it to be well received, you would want to have loads of kids come in, you would want loads of publicity, and it's been everything and more. Facilities have been the problem since day one, and they're still the problem now. I started back on Monday there after having a couple week break on holiday, and I'm in the same problem as I was when I started. Does it affect the kids? No, it only affects me trying to sort a pitch to get them on, and I really enjoy it. It's really taken my breath away how well it's been received and how well the kids really like it, which is great because it makes you proud. I'd never coached kids before. I'd obviously done a wee bit of work in the academy, but they're elite players to then coaching grassroots and having 5-year-olds that would struggle to hit that computer. It can be difficult and you have to have a lot of patience, but I think I've always been a person with my kids. I'm a proper hands-on dad. I like to go in the back garden and roll about in the snow and jump about, and you know what I mean, when I'm on holiday I never sit down, so it's I feel as though I've just kind of naturally progressed into coaching kids, whereas I probably never would have thought I would have when I was maybe 27, 28, but the more I'm doing it, the more I'm enjoying it, and I'm hoping to try and do something different. The long-term plan for me is to be a manager at a club like Hibs. I just want to take my time and I wanted to try and do something a wee bit different from what everybody else does and just jump straight into a job. I've been offered a couple of jobs in the last couple of months to be a manager at different clubs in Scotland, and I interviewed for them without applying for them. I got approached to see if I'd be interested, and I really enjoyed the procedure, and it's definitely a bridge I want to cross, but I've worked so hard with the academy. I want to aim high. I didn't want to be greedy because I'm not greedy, but I really want to aim high, and I want to try and be the manager at a great club one day, and I think sometimes when you start too low it can be difficult.
When can we expect to see you take that step? Do you have a timeline in your head?
Nah, because I think the offers that I had, one offer are a good club. I just felt that it wasn't right for me, and it was good because the people maybe barely read between the lines, but the person that got appointed the manager's job had already been a manager at a different club, and he had applied for it, but I got offered it, which was nice. So I'm hoping that I'm saying the right things, and when I'm presenting myself and my belief and the way I speak about football, hopefully chairman and board members are impressed, because that's what you need. You need an opportunity. I'm just, like I say, I have this wee fairy tale in my head that to get to the top, it's really hard to start somewhere on the ladder. Some people have a different opinion. You need to have a shot at the ladder and try and work your way up. I'm not saying something that other people haven't done before. Alan Stubbs started at Everton Academy and then he ended up manager at Hibs. Tony Mowbray at Ipswich, manager at Hibs. Robbie Nielsen, Hearts Academy, manager at Hearts. It can be done. Then you could argue Paul Hartley, Alloa to then get to where he got to. So that there is two sides. It's not like Kevin Thomson wants to do something different for everybody else. I want to try and aim as high as I possibly can. There's Neil Lennon started at Celtic, Ali McCoy started at Rangers. Do you know what I mean? So it's not that I wouldn't like to be perceived as, oh, didn't be too big for your boots and go and start somewhere lower and learn your trade. That's why I'm doing the academy. I'm making my own mistakes. I'm not on the firing line and without sounding patronising to the kids, at times whatever I say they believe. Sometimes you have to have a bit of substance behind it when you're starting to talk to full-time professionals and men. And I've never spoken in an environment where I'm the leader and I've been a captain, but it's a bit different between doing team talks and motivating players and setting up sessions, and I just want to learn as best as I possibly can to be the best I can be.
Perfect. Kevin, thank you very much for your time.
Pleasure, mate.
Sweating.
It.